How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital.
That's difficult to answer.
voice inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? Oh, I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final
And lastly, we ask that there be no recording or streaming of today's sessions from the floor. And any disruptive behavior in today's session will result in being removed from the call.
We please ask that there will be no recording or streaming of today's sessions from the floor. Any disruptive behavior today could result in being removed from the call. So, just be a nice person. So with the little housekeeping things out of the way, let's jump right in.
Again, we ask no recording or streaming of today's session.
We ask that there be no recording or streaming of today's session from the floor. Any disruptive behavior in today's session will result in being removed from the call.
Won't anybody help us? What are we running for? When there's nowhere we can run to anymore. We can't afford to be innocent. Stand up and face the enemy. It's a do or die situation. We will be invincible. And with the power of conviction, there is no sacrifice. It's a do or die situation. We will be invincible.
Who the fuck is Karlyn? She's just some sweet lady. She's like in a knitting. She does like a knitting stream. She's like a knitting YouTuber. She does knitting.
Can we grow up a little bit and
Alt
not
Girl
be
sent $200.
retarded?
Have you
Please.
seen the work of Karlyn Borysenko? Anti-commie cult leader and is obsessed with looking at what actual far-left communists are talking about and organizing today, infiltrating them. They infiltrated the universities, schools, media. She has the receipts to back it up. Primary source evidence. Infestation is dire and she calls Republicans idiots eating slop. Agree.
Thank you for the big super chat. Yeah, oh, I know Karlyn B. She's solid. She's funny. I
The
like
great
her.
noticer sent $200.
Literally.
So
Not
it's,
Ian.
it's not because I haven't dangled my junk into the combat zone on purpose to get some camera footage, but that's the big part of what's the
Is
problem.
that what you call reporting?
Go
and live
under, if
streaming?
you're going to do it,
Yeah,
go
seriously.
undercover. Otherwise you're wearing a hunk of meat in a lion's den. Nick Shirley, I love you. Take care of yourself, man. Karlyn Borysenko went undercover. Do stuff like that. Like if you want to expose this thing, don't pariah, please.
But Ian, here's and I agree with you to an extent.
I watch these streams, and I've been watching a self-professed fascist named Karlyn, who drinks and basically roasts these live streams, but weirdly, she has apparently embedded herself with Antifa before, and so it's such a funny stream because like,
so they tolerate her?
Oh no, not anymore. She like, no. She's like, I mean, I don't know if she's trolling or not, but on her stream, she's like, I am a fascist.
Right.
So she's proudly proclaiming she's a fascist. I don't know how much of that is trolling, how much of it is real, but conservatives who are drawn to her stream will say things like, these people are funded by George Soros. And it's the funniest thing because she gets so mad. And she's like, get off fucking Fox News. Stop watching that shit. It's all wrong. Do these people look funded? Do these people look like they have money? They're not funded. It's so, and I guess her bigger point is by saying these are funded agitators and not saying what they actually are, which is anti-capitalist revolutionaries, you dilute what's really happening. Because what's really happening, according to her, and I think a fair amount of people, is that the economy is so fucked. The middle class is diminishing so much. The cost of living is so high that this is the perfect soil you need if you wanted communism to grow anywhere.
Well, I guess it was inevitable. It was going to happen sooner or later. I was getting a bit too complacent. I can't lie. I was getting very complacent. I thought it was going to be easy. I wasn't actually really even that into it. And so I got caught today when I was undercover with Antifa. But man, like, first of all, it might seem like I lost because I got caught and kicked out of the event. But really, I won. I won in so many different ways. First off, when they kicked me out of the event, and we'll tell the full story in a second, when they kicked me out of the event, I had already basically done everything that I wanted to do. Like when I go undercover at things, if I can get in and get out, I am like the master of going to like every effing table in the book fair at least once in the first 15 minutes under the assumption that at some point they're going to fucking catch on and they're going to kick me out. So I had already made the rounds in the book fair. Like I went to like every table. There's a couple I wish I could have gone back to if I'm being honest about it, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter. I literally got everything. And then the rest of the day is basically a series of presentations and like panels and stuff. And there were two presentations I wanted to go to. The first was the trans liberation presentation, because of course I need to go to that one. I'm writing a book about queer Marxism. Of course I'm going to fucking go to that one. The other one that I sadly didn't get to go to was Brian Bean. And the thing of it is we know what Brian Bean's going to say. Brian Bean is going to say that the cops need to be abolished, prisons need to be abolished, the federal government needs to be abolished, yada, yada, yada. We've seen Brian Bean a million times. Really, the only reason I wanted to go to see Brian Bean in person was because I know he's going to say something fucking crazy. I know he's going to do it at a taxpayer-funded institution. And I wanted to get that on recording, but the fact is that we already have Brian Bean saying those things on video. It wouldn't, and I kind of wanted to get Reagan an autograph, if I'm honest about it. I was really hoping that Brian Bean was going to have his book with him and I could just get him to autograph something for Reagan. So I'm a little disappointed in that. I feel like I maybe let Reagan down a little bit. But you know what? I did the best I could. So I basically got there. So there's so much to talk about on this stream, guys. There's so much to fucking talk about. It's been an eventful couple of days, okay? And so for people who are just joining, I am in San Francisco. I came out here to go undercover at an event, but also to do something else too that's really cool. I'm going to tell you all about it. And so yesterday I went on a super secret mission to a rare bookstore. And I got so much cool stuff. I was telling you guys about this on like Friday or something, or Thursday or whenever, like whenever my last stream was. I told you guys I was going to go someplace where there's like historical documents and I was going to get some cool shit, and I was pretty vague about it. I got some really cool stuff. And I like, even if I had accomplished nothing at the event today, yesterday when I was at that rare bookstore, it was such a fucking W. And you guys are gonna love the materials I got. I got some really old, cool, like communist stuff that is gonna like go into an archive somewhere, like some really rare shit. Okay. And so no one else has the stuff that I have, essentially, which is really cool. But so I did that yesterday, and even if they would have caught me on the way in the door today, it would have still been a total win because of the cool stuff I got yesterday. But I have to say, like, if I'm going to get kicked out of an event, I want it to happen exactly like that. Because I had already gone to all the tables. I had already gotten all the propaganda I was really interested in. To be honest, there wasn't even that much different at this one than the Bay Area Anarchist Book Fair. I'll show you everything I got. I got a whole bag of stuff. I got a lot of stuff, but it's just like, it was nothing really mind-blowing to me. It was kind of just like, it's really similar to the last one, like whatever. So I went to all the stuff. I went to the trans liberation session. And so the sessions are 90 minutes long, right? So about an hour and 10 minutes into it. So there's only 20 minutes left of the session. So I'm sitting there, and of course, like, I have my phone out and I'm recording them, and they said so much crazy shit in that presentation, and we're going to listen to it on the stream because I have the recording downloaded and all set up now. But like, they said so much crazy shit. I was like sitting there. Thank God I was wearing a mask, because I was sitting there going, I was like, there were times when I was like holding on to the chair with an iron grip. I'm like, don't react, Karlyn. Because I'm sitting directly in front of them. And so I had my phone, I recorded the whole thing. And then an hour and 10 minutes into the fucking presentation, they had just started Q&A. And in runs these two white people. And one of them kind of comes around and he sits right next to me. And I'm not doing nothing. Like, I had my phone out on the desk. I was charging it. And so that was basically all I was even doing. I didn't say anything to anyone. I wasn't rude to anyone. I didn't make a face at anyone. I wasn't disruptive in any way. I did nothing but sit there. So this guy comes in, and a woman is sitting on the other side of the room, and he comes around the table and he sits next to me, and then he sits there for like 10 minutes, and then he gets up and leaves. And I'm like, what's going on? I had a feeling something was going on. And then he barges back in and he disrupts the entire presentation. Remember, I haven't done shit. I don't disrupt things when I go to them. I just sit there and I listen to them. And that was basically it. I had a question formulating that I wanted to ask, and that was it. I wasn't being disruptive. This guy comes back in, disrupts the entire presentation to shut the room down and say, "Are you Karlyn?" And of course, I'm like, no. I denied so hard. I denied so hard. I was like, nope, not me. Nope, definitely not me. I'm not. And then he's like, come with me. And I'm like, all right. And so we go outside, and he shows me his phone. He's like, this is you. And I'm like, guys, he must have had at least a dozen pictures of me on his phone. They had so many pictures of me. They haven't yet figured out how to pronounce my name, but they absolutely went on all of my social media and downloaded all of my most recent pictures. And in one of those pictures, I was wearing this hat, which I was wearing today because I'm like, this is the perfect fucking disguise. No one can question me if I wear this hat. Like, this is literally all it takes is to be a they, them, and they're not allowed to question you ever. And so I was wearing this hat, which I had previously worn in one single picture on my social media, and they fucking had it on their phone. I was like, man. But the thing is, I had already recorded most of that fucking presentation. I had already gone to the exhibit hall and got everything I wanted. And really, yeah, would I have liked to see Brian Bean in person? Yeah, I really would have. That would have been rad. I know he's going to say something crazy, something like overthrowing the government at a taxpayer fine. I know he's going to do something like that. And I'm not going to be there to record it. And that kind of sucks. But whatever, man. Whatever. Because you know why? It's so much of a better story now. It's like, did they not think this thing through? Like, It's so much of a better story now. I'm going to make so much of a bigger deal out of this now than I was going to make out of it before. Like it's like it's going to get more attention and all this stuff. And guys, like honestly, this isn't a taxpayer funded institution, so I don't think they can actually do that. And so Gabrielle Clark, who I trust and I've known for a long time, she seems to think that I can sue the college for this, which I'm kind of like, I'm not opposed to this idea. Can some lawyer get in contact with me because I was at a taxpayer-funded college at a supposedly public event where I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't disruptive. I wasn't mean. I hadn't said anything to anyone. I was literally just picking up literature and having conversations with people. And then I get kicked out of the event. And oh, by the way, when he pulled his phone out and he had all these images of me on his phone, he said, she doxed someone from the Bay Area Anarchist Book Fair. And I was like, bitch, I wasn't even recording at the Bay Area Anarchist Book Fair. I just went around and got all your fucking propaganda. And I brought Turning Point USA and Jonathan Cho with me. And so, you know, maybe I brought a reporter to the event, but I wasn't the one recording. Jonathan Cho was the one recording. So he's running around telling everyone I doxed people. I didn't dox anyone. But now you want to accuse me of doxing people. I'll fucking dox people. I don't really care. I'm going to dox the people I saw in the presentation today. Absolutely. Because it's not even doxing. You want to know why it's not even doxing? They're at a public fucking event with their name on the schedule. Like, so Gabrielle Clark seems to think that I can sue the school for this because it's a public taxpayer-funded university and I wasn't breaking any of the rules. There were no rules against recording. There was no rule against audio recording. I'm sorry. They may have assumed that because they said no photos of anyone, that's not the same as audio recording. I'm sorry. Like, come on. So I wasn't being disruptive. I wasn't being abusive in any way. I did nothing wrong. I didn't bother anyone. But they kicked me out because they don't like me, because I have different political beliefs than them. So I don't know if any lawyer wants to help think that through. I would definitely be open to that conversation, mostly just to prove a fucking point. You know, I've been accused by conservatives repeatedly. They say, Karlyn, you don't really go undercover with the Antifa. All you do is go to public events. Well, then why in the ever-loving fuck did I just get kicked out of a public event today when I was doing nothing wrong, breaking no policies, was just my mere presence based on something that didn't even happen because I didn't even record anyone at the Bay Area Anarchist Book Fair. Jonathan Cho did. My mere presence was enough to perturb them for them to potentially open the City College of San Francisco up to a lawsuit from me for discrimination. So if any lawyer wants to help out with that, you let me know, okay? But then it got even crazier after that because I just kind of left. I didn't make a big deal out of it. Like my general thought process was like, whatever, I'm kind of done anyway, so whatever. And I basically left. And then I started walking back to my hotel. And that was a good long walk. It was a couple miles from where I was, but my adrenaline was running and I wanted to take a walk and it's a nice day out and like whatever. So I start walking down the street and I don't really know what's around me. I was just like, let me just walk around. I'm walking through this neighborhood, seeing what's there. And there was like a very leftist bookstore. So I went, so when I left the City College of San Francisco, I noticed that a black guy had like followed me out of the building. And that he had his iPad facing towards me as I was on the other side of the street. And I was like, is he recording me? It was the weirdest thing. He just followed me out with his iPad. He was like recording me across the street as I was like filming the video in front of the building. I was like, is that fucker recording me? But then I basically put my video up. I finished my video. I turned around. He wasn't there anymore. So I was just like, okay, well, whatever. He recorded me crossing the street. Like who really cares? So then I started walking down the street and it was a couple blocks down the street. And I saw this leftist bookstore and I was like, oh, leftist bookstore. Okay, let's go into there and see what's what. And so I was just kind of like walking around and this guy comes in and he starts following me around the fucking store. And then he gets right up in my face and he puts the iPad in my face, got a giant ass BLM sticker, it's this big black guy. And he's like, got the fucking iPad in my face. And I'm like, excuse me, can I help you? Why the fuck are you recording me? And so then he runs out of the bookstore and I start running after him. And I'm like, why the fuck are you recording me? Why the fuck are you recording me? And I said something about like, you know, fuck your black ass or something like that. Or like, I definitely called him black. I definitely called him black because he was. But so here's the best part of the entire story. So if I've just had a black fucking leftist follow me several blocks down the street to record me walking away from that event, and he was following me, he was recording me, he was harassing me, he came up and stuck his iPad in my face, and then I yell at him and call him something black ass, and I'm the one who gets in trouble for being racist. Like literally, I got in trouble with the bookstore owner. He's like, well, that he like this fucking hipster dude with this gay ass beard comes out. He's like, well, that that was uncalled for. I'm like, he just followed me blocks down the street, recording me and harassing me for no reason. I'm not doing anything to anyone, and I'm the bad person for pointing out that he is a black man. Okay. Well, whatever. So I got kicked out of the event, but I still got a whole bunch of cool shit from it. And I got a whole bunch of historical stuff yesterday. And I still got their session secretly recorded. And we're going to listen to the secret recording on this stream. And the other ironic thing about this is, listen. Sorry. So listen. There are crazy clips in this recording. There like legitimately crazy shit was said in this recording. So, but probably what would have happened had I not gotten kicked out is I probably would have come home and in a couple of days I would have made some clips. I would put them out on the internet. People would have mostly ignored it because it's the holidays and people aren't paying attention, even though we think it's crazy and we know it's crazy. It probably wouldn't have even gotten that much coverage if I'm honest about it. But now, since they've done pissed me off and they accused me of doing something I didn't do, which is doxing people at the last event when I didn't even record anyone at the last event, since they've done pissed me off and they kicked me out of a public event for no good reason, I'm just going to play the full recording on my stream. And guess what? Probably thousands and thousands and thousands more people are going to hear the recording now, and it's going to get much more attention now that it happened after you wrongly kicked me out of your event. So, jokes on the communists. Jokes on the communists. But guys, welcome to the stream. We're doing a special Sunday stream. We got RD is a new member, and then RD gifted 20 channel memberships. Are you serious? Thank you, RD. Is so generous. Congrats to everyone who got a channel membership. Really, really do appreciate it. We got Naruto with the $10. December last year, someone tried to assassinate Nick Fuentes, and no one... Yeah, wasn't that crazy? They tried to kill Nick Fuentes, and literally no one covered it. That was nuts. On December 5th, someone shot at Tim Pool's house. Watch him get invited on all the shows to talk about it. Yep. I mean, bulls suck. So I guess what can you do? All right, guys, please make sure you mount the like button if you would be so kind. Let's get more people in on this stream. Hope you guys are all having a great Sunday. So let me do this. What do we want to do first? So let me ask you this. One in the chat, if you guys want to see the cool historical stuff that I got. 2 in the chat, if you want to see the stuff I got from the event today. And we'll do both. Just which one do you want to see first? Do you want to see the really cool historical stuff I got yesterday? 1. Or do you want to see the stuff I got today first? And we'll see both of them. This is just about which one we do first. Looks like historical stuff has it. So we're going to do the historical stuff first. Hang on. Where is it? Right here. I got a whole ass bag. This is okay, so basically, I went to this bookstore, and I'm never going to be able to come back here again after this so I can say where I went. I went to Delirium Books. Now, listen, Delirium Books is run by a bunch of leftists, okay? That's very true. But I have to give Delirium Books credit where credit is due. They have an amazing collection. It is incredible. They are a bookstore that is dedicated basically to rare books and rare artifacts from leftist subculture all throughout history. So they've got just some of the coolest shit. And they have a ton of it. It's like a full like floor of a building with just like old books and old documents and old this and old that. And it's just all leftist subculture stuff. They have some right-wing stuff too, like stuff that the right wing has written and stuff like that. They even had some cool anti-Semitic stuff. I didn't get the anti-Semitic stuff I really wanted to, but like I didn't because, you know, it's too expensive. But like I know they're all leftists that run that bookstore. And I lied to them about my name because I didn't want any shit because I really did want to see their stuff. And I just have to give them credit where credit is due. They have an amazing resource. And I don't even care that they're leftists because they have preserved so many cool artifacts throughout history. And like, I really hope they let me buy from them again because I absolutely will. They've got so much cool shit. So respect for that, man. Respect for preservation of history, if nothing else. You don't have to agree with someone politically to identify when they've put together just a really cool resource for all of us to use. Things that we would never get to see otherwise. Documents we would never get to be able to see. And now we can have access to them. That's awesome. Okay? That's awesome. So I got a whole bunch of cool stuff. We're going to do this one last. Hang on. How am I going to organize this? Let's see. Hang on. Getting some other communist stuff out. So I got some, I went to an anarchist bookstore yesterday. This is just, it's all in the same bag. I got these little zines. This one is about how Christopher Columbus is a white supremacist. And this is about the abolition of work. And check this out. Look at this zine. Why do anarchists abstain from elections? Could they be any more clear that they don't want to vote in elections? They're writing fucking zines about it, okay? So, Batty girl Rachel, congrats on your kick out. Hope you can sue. Yeah, that'd be pretty rad if I can sue. If nothing else, it would get attention. Hopefully a few more people's eyes. Exactly. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we're going to start with this. This, not that. This is 2 copies of a newspaper that came out, this one in 1971, this 1972. This is called The Radical Therapist. This is about socialist psychotherapy. This was a fucking newspaper specifically for far leftists doing fucking psychotherapy and psychiatry and all those things. And it's fucking like, so you guys know we've talked occasionally about like queer therapists on the channel. Queer therapists are like actual therapists that focus on helping you live a queer lifestyle or whatever. This shit goes back to the 70s. So that's cool thing number 1. Cynthia, 20 channel membership, Cynthia. Awesome. I really do appreciate it. So generous. Thank you for all your support. It's awesome. Congrats to everyone who got a channel membership from Cynthia. Appreciate it. This is a magazine from 1994, I think. Pretty sure it's from 1994. This is a magazine called The Essential Queer Youth. This is almost a pristine copy of a queer liberation magazine for kids that came out in the 90s. Crazy, crazy, crazy shit. But it gets better. Oh, check this out. This I got mostly because it's a historical artifact and I wanted one. Little Miss, holy crap, this ties into the changes in medical treatment over the years. Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. But sit on that. We're going to come back to that. So this is more of a historical artifact. in my book about queer Marxism that I'm working on, the second chapter is dedicated to a group called the Daughters of Bilitis. So we've talked about the Mattachine Society on the channel, the Mattachine Society being like basically the communist men's society that got created in 1950, which is really the like the initiation of queer Marxism, right? That's when queer Marxism was first planted into the American cultural zeitgeist. So they had this gay males association called the Mattachine Society that was really basically a communist cover group, and that is what spurred queer Marxism. The Daughters of Bilitis were it's the second chapter of my book is about them, because they were the first women to form a little lesbian society. And they were actually in San Francisco, and they had a meeting for lesbians who wanted to talk about lesbian things, and they produced a newsletter. And this is one of the earliest copies of that newsletter that I basically got for historical purposes. The Daughters of Bilitis weren't militant queer liberationists, but several years into it, they started getting infiltrated by queer liberationists, like anti-assimilationists. And there are actually letters and other copies of this publication where you can see people are starting to encourage them to be more militant and to really work towards queer liberation, where they were very assimilationist. So that's just a cool kind of like historical artifact. This isn't a big deal. I actually got this at a different place. This is a copy of like the Journal of Gay Liberation from the 70s, I think, 1977. Not a ton in there, a couple cool things, but that's another thing I got. We're gonna do that one next. Check this out. This is from 1935. This is a bulletin of the Industrial Vanguard, basically the Communist Party in the United States in 1935. This is an original item. And check this out. Check this out. I have to be very careful with this one. Check this out. This page is about communists fighting Nazis. Again, this was in 1935. Published October 1935. Isn't that cool? Early commie zine right there. So then I have two copies of this. This is a communist newspaper. This is the first. This is like the first ever issue of this newspaper. It's called the People's Vanguard, and you can see they've got like articles about like fascism on the front and stuff like that. This is from when? 73. And then check this out. I think these are from the 50s. Hang on. I think these are from the 50s. Ooh, 47. Wrong. These are from the 40s. Check this out. So these are two early communist zines from the 40s. And these were written specifically in response to Joseph McCarthy. So you've got a whole little zine here about like, is communism un-American? And so they're answering 9 questions about communism back in the day. And then this is another one, I challenge the un-American. So this is him basically calling out Joseph McCarthy. How cool is that? Commie zines from the 40s. And then check this out. You guys are gonna love this. This is from, I forget, when is this from? 1994? Not sure exactly what this is from. I believe this is from the 90s. This is a copy of a magazine called Radical Teacher, the special edition about queer studies. This is a teaching magazine. This talks up and down about teaching kids about queer shit in schools. And I'm pretty sure this was published in the 90s. Hang on. I'll tell you when. It's in pristine condition. When were you published? Says 1994. 1994. You know, people think this shit just popped up. This stuff didn't just pop up. For people who are new, this has been around forever. And you know, one of the things that really pisses me off, and one of the things that I've thought a lot about in the last couple of days, getting all of this like old stuff, is that they've been doing this in the open forever and no one thought to look. They've been doing it in the open forever and no one thought to look. They were writing whole magazines. They wrote newspapers. They wrote books about this shit. They've been doing it forever, and we never even noticed. It's so mind-boggling. Yo, Cynthia in with the $100. Thank you, Cynthia. Sorry I've been absent for a bit. Missed everyone for the Fascist Fund, Cover Charge, Center for Left-Wing Studies, and the holidays. Do something nice. Thank you, Cynthia. That's awesome. I really do appreciate it. All right. And then, so I got a couple books. These are both anti-communist books. These are not pro-communist books. This is one called The Red Conspiracy, and it was published, hang on, 1920. This book is both of these books are over 100 years old. And this is all warning people about communism, like printed back in the days of the Russian Revolution. And then this one is even older. This is called Socialism, the Nation of Fatherless Children. This book was published before the Russian Revolution. It's just insane. This is like a second edition of the book. I think the first one was published in 1911. And so this is the second edition of it to come out. So it was like a couple years later. But how crazy is that? 2 books that are over 100 years old, like early anti-communist books. And then this is a big stash. Check this out. This is 16 copies, 16 different bulletins from basically like student communists in the 70s. So we have all their position papers. So these are like student publishers who are like running the Young Socialist Party or whatever. And this is 16 of their newsletters where they're talking about all their beliefs. They're arguing about their beliefs. There's like back and forth. There's so much good stuff. And this spans the course of years. And they're all in great condition. And it's just like, it's so interesting to be able to go back and see, guys, they're saying nothing different today. They are saying nothing different today that they weren't saying in the fucking 70s. It's all the same. It might be just like slightly different here or there, but like it's all the same over and over and over again. I think I'm just trying to get it back in this protective sheet. So that was cool. Now, the last 2, the Piece to Resistance. I saved the best for last. You guys ready? This is an original bashback flyer. So one of the movements we talk a lot about on the channel is the bashback movement. The bashback movement came after the ACT UP movement in the 80s. The ACT UP movement was the original kind of queer militant activists. And that kind of evolved into something called the bashback movement, which started in 2008 and kind of ended around 2011, 2012. But they're trying to get it back up and running now. This is an original bashback flyer that was handed out in the East Bay in this area back in I think this was around 2010. Like, how crazy is that? And it lays out all their beliefs. It says Bashback is a group of anti-assimilationist, sex-positive, radical queers with chapters in DC, Chicago, Portland, Lansing, Memphis, Milwaukee, Olympia, Philly, and Baltimore, dedicated to eradicating homonormativity, subverting binary gender norms, capitalism, and attacking intersecting oppressions, including but not limited to white supremacy, patriarchy, classism, ableism, sizeism, and poverty, both inside and outside the movement. For all members of Bashback must adhere to the primary points of unity. 1. Fight for liberation, nothing more, nothing less. State recognition in the form of oppressive institutions such as marriage and militarism are not steps towards liberation, but rather towards homonormative assimilation. 2, a rejection of capitalism, imperialism, and all forms of state power. 3, actively oppose oppression, both in and out of the movement. All oppressive behavior is not to be tolerated. 4, respect the diversity of tactics in the struggle for liberation. Do not solely condemn an attack on the grounds that the state deems it to be illegal. We are fierce as fuck, radical queers, trans folks, and feminists. Come to our first meeting. Original Bashback fucking flyer that says everything. It says every single fucking thing. How crazy is that? But still, There's one that's better. And I posted a video about this earlier today, so some people might already know about this. This is the coolest fucking thing I own. This is the coolest fucking thing that I own. I'm going to treasure this for the rest of my life. This is an original relic from the McCarthy era. This is from Joseph McCarthy's office and was handed out to every senator in the United States Senate at his censure hearing in 1954. This was directly used by McCarthy. And the whole point of this, and I'm going to show you what's in it, this was a packet of documents basically that his office, McCarthy's office, made of all of these Daily Worker newspapers. The Daily Worker was like the communist newspaper. And so basically they took all the they took all the communists like bitching and complaining about Joseph McCarthy. They took all the clips and they put them in this basically to try to illustrate to the senators, if you censor Joseph McCarthy, then the communists win. So when they're saying who is the bum is McCarthy. These are clips of communists bitching and complaining about Joseph McCarthy. And you can see at the bottom there, this is handwritten on the document, passed by Senator McCarthy to each senator during censure hearings, November 1954. Come the fuck on. This is from McCarthy. And it's even better than that. It's a whole bunch of like photocopies of communists bitching and complaining about him. So I need to be very careful with this. Anything happens with this, I'm going to be mad. So these are clips from the Daily Worker where they're bitching and complaining about McCarthy. And this was actually handed out at his hearings. And so like, how many copies of this can actually even exist? It's just clips. Just like photocopies of clips. And so it's like all the things that communists were saying about him, all the bitching and moaning and whining that they did. I'm just trying to look for good stuff to show you guys. So this is the whole article written by one of the chief communists. And they've got circled here. So you can see where they were even making notes in them. They've got it circled here. McCarthy must be driven out of public life. It's so fucking cool. It's so fucking cool. Hang on. All from communist newspapers at the time. Anyway, so this goes on, and I will post pictures of all of this, but those are all the really kick-ass historical things that I got. And again, like if nothing had happened today, if I hadn't even gotten the recording today, this trip would have still just been like a massive fucking W, because I literally have something that came out of Joseph McCarthy's office, and it's possibly one of the coolest things I could have, because it's like just a whole packet of communists bitching and complaining about McCarthy in exactly the same way that they bitch and complain about me. I can't think of a cooler piece of memorabilia from this era to have. So that's fucking awesome. That's awesome. So that is all the cool historical stuff I got. Do you guys want to see what I got today at the event? And then we will listen to the trans liberation presentation after that. So you guys will hear the presentation that I recorded clandestinely. So this is a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, hang on. The committee to defend Tom Alter was there. They were one of the first people that I saw on my way in the building. And had I had a chance, I probably would have gone back and bought a t-shirt or something from them just because. But I have the committee to defend Tom Alter. I have a button in here too somewhere. So this stuff is all just kind of like out of order because I had it spread out all over the bed. This is just organizing stuff. This is more committee to defend Tom Alter stuff. Revolutionary socialism. Got a whole bunch of flyers here. Revolution is self-defense. Our bodies, our choice. We are the ones to defend our rights. Looks like a bad case of capitalism. Yep. Hey, thanks for that super chat. Really appreciate it. No ice. I got a commie newspaper called Turning the Tide. I'll have to take a look at that. Hang on, I'm just putting my documents irresponsibly on my computer. Let me make another spot for them on the table. Got a bunch of zines. Eternal War on the Hitler Youth. You Can't Shoot Us All. Riot Medicine Field Guide. DIY Trans Healthcare, History and Practice. There was a lot of DIY trans healthcare stuff, by the way, I saw there. Whole bunch of it. Let's see. This is a thing specifically about Seattle. The guy that I took it from was really nice, so he was very excited about it. Let's see. Anti-authoritarianism on rejecting the leader label. So this will be about like anti-hierarchy and stuff like that. There was a couple of zines about trans mass studies from like the 1800s and then the 1900s, I guess. Socialism will be free or it will not be at all. This is about the Long Haul Info Shop. That's an Antifa distributing place in the Bay Area. Critical reflections on mutual aid. Survival of the organized. I wonder how they get funded. How to organize your building into a tenant rights association. Keeping ICE out of your workplace. Is that what that is? Yeah, how to keep ICE out of your workplace. This is something by Susan Stryker. I don't even really know what it is, but it's by Susan Stryker, who's a queer liberation activist. This was written by one of the people I saw presenting on that panel today, Revolutionary Trans Politics and the Three-Way Fight. This is just a Mobilize ICE flyer. This is it's a book of essays of like queer liberation essays, has Arm the Dolls in it. We've read Arm the Dolls. When they say the dolls, they mean trans people. This was written by Emmy O'Brien in 2019. I don't know what this is. I'm sure Misakan's read it, but an Emmy O'Brien piece was handed out. And of course, Be Gay, Do Crime. I already have this one, but I wanted to pick it up anyway, because of course they had to hand out Be Gay, Do Crime. Of course they do. Let's see. Couple more things. These are some stickers. Free Palestine. Organized to Smash Transphobia. Defund, disarm, disband the police. Capitalism equals climate change. This is Palestinian solidarity thing with the watermelon. Queer is in Burn It Down, because queer is about leftist politics. Got two of those. What is queer liberation? This is from the DSA. So this is from the San Francisco DSA. And then what is socialist feminism? Let's see. I got a couple more things, just pins basically. Let's see. Queers Hate Techies, Gay Shame pin. Gay Shame is a queer organization. Oh, another button. This is also a prized possession now. Another Defend Tom Alter button, so that's pretty cool. Let's see. Trans rights or worker rights. Oh, come on. Where's the other pen? There it is. Look at this. There's an Everything for Everyone pin. This is the book that Emmy O'Brien wrote. And then, shit, where'd it go? Got it. This says power to the dolls. Again, the dolls are trans people. So that is my haul, basically, from the book fair that I got kicked out of today. So I think that's a pretty good haul, honestly. Hang on. I'm just trying to keep everything separated because it's just easier that way to keep things organized to like where I got which things. So there we go. Also, I got a socialist newspaper. It's on the floor. I know all my historical stuff. I'll show you guys that another day. So got a pretty good haul, I have to say. I'm pretty happy with that. Do you guys want to hear the presentation? So this is the presentation that I secretly recorded. Now, we don't have video, we only have audio, so we're gonna have to do the best we can. I tried not to move around that much, so I think the recording is probably gonna be pretty consistent. I have not listened to the whole thing, so I don't know exactly how it went. So we're all just gonna have to manage the quality of the recording together, okay? Because I had to get that up really quickly, and it was what it was. So let's just dig in and listen to the presentation.
Y'all feeling ready? Excited to be sort of having. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. Can folks hear me? Everyone? Okay, great. My name is Rowan Sirsha. I am from Portland, Oregon. Use she, her pronouns.
Rowan is the one on the far right there. I know it's not a good picture, but I was trying to take it clandestinely, okay? So it's not great. But Rowan is the one on the far right. Rowan was wearing a shirt that said "Death Before Transition."
And I used to do a lot of political work, sort of in left spaces, then had a kid, and the combination of how the left works and how parenting works meant that I wasn't in those spaces anymore. And then, yeah, I had a kid, I had a sex change, and the combination of those things puts me once again in sort of a state of antagonism with the state. So excited to be sort of having some of these conversations about how do we survive together and fight for liberation in what feels like a really scary time. Do you want to close?
Open or is it crosstalk?
Whatever folks, if folks can hear, that's great. We can close it in a couple of minutes, let folks show up with that. Thank you so much. So yeah, this panel is trans liberation in the context of gender authoritarianism. And I have two co-panelists here who I'm super excited to have, and I am meeting for the first time. So if y'all want to start out by just introducing yourself, name, pronouns, if that's a thing you feel like sharing, what political work or organizations you're engaged in, and yeah.
I'm Toshio, and all pronouns. And
All pronouns.
I recently have been doing work with, well, for years, I've been doing work with Gay Shame. We are having what we call a new friends meeting next Friday.
Here it is. Would
Sure.
anyone like one of these?
Yeah.
It's also online, but you're happy to take
Yeah, there's flyers up here. It's basically getting to know other people that are interested in doing direct action. And the Bay, we've been doing different direct actions over the past 20 years. You can bring a shirt. We're going to do some screen printing.
The shirts say Dyke Say Zionist. You can get one there for free.
So if you couldn't hear that, they're having an event to get together with other radical gay activists where they're making T-shirts that says "Dykes Hate Zionists." You know, I actually can't complain about that. Whatever.
I mean, bring your shirt. I mean, there might be some too, but
Yeah. And I do a podcast called San Francisco that Gemma has been featured guest. And I also collaborated with Miss Major, who is somebody who worked in the Bay for many years. And we wrote a book about her activism as somebody who's been doing work since the 60s around Black trans liberatory work.
okay. I'm Gemma. What do we got? She, her. Was the thing? Well, you kind of talked about Gay Shame. I've also worked with Gay Shame, which is a radical queer direct action group that started in 2001. I'm
Sure.
looking at people. Okay. Not that, I wasn't there then. And yeah, we do a lot of anti-gentrification stuff. We've done a lot of Palestine stuff over the years, but also obviously more recently, for obvious reasons more recently. And what are some other things? Anti-Waymo things, maybe? If that interests people. They killed a lot of people anyway. And yeah, I don't know the need.
I just want to say I don't actually disagree with them on the Waymo stuff. Like the Waymos, like seeing these driverless cars drive around is freaky, and I don't like it. And so I think I'm on the side of the socialist on this one. Like I would do anti-Waymo activism with them, definitely.
Add much to that. I mean, I think we're going to keep this pretty informal. It seems like I think we know about
No,
the audience.
no, hang on. When I say that I would work with them on this stuff, I'm being kind of facetious because they would never, ever, ever work with me. If I said, "Hey, listen, I'm an anti-Zionist. I don't like Israel. I don't want anything to do with Israel. I fully support your pro-Palestine stuff. I'm not, well, not for the same reasons, but like we have no beef on the Palestine issue. Can we work on the anti-Zionist stuff? Can we do that? No, because they still think that we're fascists. And I mean, technically, like, I'm probably more fascist than most, but like, I would totally put differences aside to do anti-Waymo stuff. I would totally put differences aside to do like anti-Zionist stuff, 100%, but they won't do it. And you should never expect them to do it. And by the way, just because we agree on the topic doesn't mean we agree for the same reason. So they have different reasons for disliking Israel than I have, essentially. But we agree on the dislike, but for different reasons.
You can talk about your book.
Do you have a book?
I'm selling a book. I don't know how much of it. I forgot to
Do the math.
look at my margins. Yeah, I wrote a book. This is on due process called The Aesthetic Character of Blackness. It's kind of like about how art is waged against Black life. So it's kind of, you might call it an anti-art book. Some people might call it that. Or anti-Black art, which is sort of argues against Black art, which is not something I think other people have done. And it does talk about the Bay Area some. So it does talk about it begins with talking about 2020 and kind of the moment of reaction that we're in, but more so the sort of neoliberal aspects of it that I think not that there's any difference between those, like as we see in San Francisco, but it talks a lot about how art and sort of the symbolization or over-symbolization of Black people has used to kill Black people, like expand police, all these things that we'll probably talk about today, prisons, real estate, luxury condos. I mean, we're in an area where, so yeah, if that kind of thing interests you, maybe the book would interest you. And this is also a book too, Miss Major Speaks.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to introduce.
Awesome. Thank you both so much, and thank you all for coming. So I think the format is we're just gonna sort of shoot the shit up here for a little bit with some questions, and then probably pretty quickly just open it up for discussion and sort of think together about where are we, what are we doing, how are we doing. There are also some some zines, button stickers over there. You should feel free to grab some before you leave, because I would really rather not take them through airport security this evening. So awesome. So I think the first question we had talked about was just asking folks on the panel, like, how are you doing right now? Both emotionally, how are you feeling impacted by gender politics in this moment? And then also, like, how do we understand what's happening in this moment politically?
Yeah.
Where are we? And how are you with that?
Yeah, do you want to start?
You want me to start?
Sure.
Probably won't. I don't usually tend to speak in personalized statements as much, but I think, I mean, it's interesting. Well, you had the Miss Major quote, which I think is a really good one about it, like being a reaction to now. But I don't want to steal that.
Oh no, go for it.
Okay. Well, a friend talked about how, was it during, you talked about how Miss Major, it was in 2016 she said that or something? Or before the 2014, 2015. It's sort of this trans representational moment that like, there will be a reaction to this. Kind of like, if for those of us that grew up in the 90s, or it is true of the 80s, that it feels like very much a reaction to the 60s and 70s, the long 60s to the 70s, right? That's how I kind of look at this moment. Like there's a lot of, I'm not trying to like be too online.
I just got a notification that some communist is like complaining on one of my Facebook pages or something, that calling me a trans woman and saying like, how can you possibly be a far right trans woman? You know, they have to cope. They have to cope. Oh, by the way, before we get done, remind me to tell you guys about the area that I'm staying in San Francisco, because that's another trip, but I'll talk about that later.
About it, but it does feel like there's a very intense, broad swath of like conservative gender politics and regressive things like trad, but all these things, which in Portland, I mean, it's great. That's right. I grew up in Posa. And you know, it is. I think there is a lot of. I remember this moment where a lot of trans people, particularly a lot of white trans people, were like, "Oh my God, Trump got elected again. I'm leaving the country." I guess this is the way I'll answer your question. And you know, that feels very like white. Like it feels like a very like it's like, oh, this land is difficult. We're gonna go find, you know, kind of recolonize. Probably guess Europe, because Europe is like a vassal of the U.S., right? Like move to Portugal or move to whatever. And so I feel, you know, if we go back to the Pilgrims, right? Like I feel very more rooted here, and I feel like I very much. I know people would kind of have like a doom thing, which is fine too. I usually do things that way, but I do really feel very rooted in the community I've spent years building. Like that feels the most important to me. Like as
Just so everyone's clear, the person talking right now is this Gemma person that's on the left, and then this is obviously the Asian person, and then this is the person that. This is Rowan. Rowan on the right is the most interesting person in this.
I see things, like I teach, and there's probably people saw this in the news. I think it was in Texas. This person got fired for teaching about trans. So it's a pretty famous case. And I'm kind of like, you know, you think of being a professor or a lot of jobs that people could talk about where you move for the job, and that was part of the sort of like, you know, spirit of the generation was like, oh, you're supposed to move for your career and that kind of thing. Supposed to you.
They confused the professor getting fired for calling to overthrow the government with the professor who was fired for being trans. But the other one, the trans one, got rehired. The one that I got fired did not get rehired.
Well, you know, you will get some things in life, you'll acquire property. And I feel like this is a moment where people finding out that that was always very tenuous. Same thing, we'll probably talk about trans rights, or like the idea of rights, which are us giving up our power to the state. I don't think rights are any form of power. I think they are actually a thing that regulates us and prevents us from building the world we actually want and need. So normally I would assume people would start with the like downer thing, but I actually really appreciate the community, trans community, you know, obviously, trans and queer community that I have in the Bay, and particularly San Francisco, because, well, I don't think anyone's like prepared for this moment, and I think that's the biggest thing people are learning. Like, I really feel like that about Palestine is that people just were not prepared, and so you're like, there's really basic shit people had to do, and then when people are like, oh, why can't we stop this bad thing from happening? It's like, well, no one has been preparing for that. So maybe that's the way we can look at, among other things, this workshop, like how we can be ready, or, you know. So, does that answer how I feel, I guess? So yeah, I think this is a moment of reaction. That's kind of where I started. And I think it's, you know, the future is not determined type of thing. Who knows where it'll go, but we kind of have some capacity to shape that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I am clinging to the hope that we have some the opportunity to change things. That's why I engage in direct actions. That's why I write. And one of the things that's been helpful in collaborating with somebody who was, she recently passed, but lived doing work around Black trans liberation since the 60s, is the perspective of somebody who has gone through some really rough times, spending time, you know, in prison, being politicized by someone who was at the Attica uprising, someone who was caring for people with HIV and AIDS in the 80s and 90s, when, you know, getting a diagnosis was like an automatic, you know, death sentence. And, you know, like in the early 80s, the Castro.
I'm actually bummed that I got kicked out before I got to ask my questions, because I was going to ask a very thoughtful question about the ACT UP movement, and we didn't even get a chance to have that discussion because the stupid event kicked me out for no good reason. What about a much better discussion if I was going to ask about the bashback movement, and I was going to ask about ACT UP, and every single person on that panel would have loved answering the questions that I was going to lob them something that they really would have enjoyed answering. It's like the event screwed up the entire presentation for everyone else. The event, by kicking me out for, again, no good reason, basically robbed the entire rest of that room from hearing really good questions and discussions about things they understand that I wanted to get them on video or recording saying. Do I know about the, no, I don't, but I do now. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'm going to take a screenshot of that. I appreciate it. Thank you for the super chat.
Was cleared out, and the Tenderloin and Polk cleared out because of the virus. And Reagan, who came from California, sort of, was making sure that a lot of people were not able to access care. I do think about how San Francisco, like General Hospital, played such a huge part in turning the tide, so to speak. And I do think there are ways that we can fight back. Even just being here at the rare college that has free tuition for people who live in San Francisco, there are ways that people are fighting.
I just want to point this out. The taxpayers in San Francisco pay for people to go to that college for free. Just saying. And they're kicking people out they don't politically agree with? Okay. Cynthia in with the 10 channel memberships. Thank you, Cynthia. As always, W Cynthia in the chat. Congrats to everyone who got a channel membership from Cynthia. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys real quick about the area I'm staying in San Francisco. It's tangentially related to this. They're talking about the Tenderloin, right? So I'm actually at a hotel in the Tenderloin. I'm staying, and I wasn't necessarily inclined to stay here, but the hotel is actually really nice and really great. And, it's whatever. It is what it is. It was like the closest basically I could get to the event. And so I was like, fine, there's a lot of hotels in this area. I'm sure it's fine. So I get out of the car when on Friday when I got here. The first thing I see is that I am in the transgender district in San Francisco. Now, I knew that they had made a transgender district. I knew they put up a big sign saying, this is the transgender district and all that, but I didn't actually know exactly where it was. I thought it was kind of tangentially around the Tenderloin, but I didn't know for sure because that's where Compton's Cafeteria Riot was and stuff like that. And so I literally, the first thing I see is a giant sign hanging from a lamppost saying transgender district. And so then I decided the next morning to get out and walk around. Okay, what is in the transgender district that they're honoring with a several block radius in San Francisco? And there are signs everywhere saying it's the transgender district, and they painted some sidewalks trans colors, and I have pictures of all of this I can show you guys. But do you know what's in the transgender district in San Francisco? Nothing. There's nothing here. There's seedy hotels, like hotels that you rent by the hour or something like that. There's a lot of liquor stores. There's homeless and drug addicts all over the street. There's shit all over the streets. There are people doing drugs on the street constantly around here. There's no point in even walking around because basically if it's not like a seedy nightclub or a seedy hotel or some sort of gross store that I definitely wouldn't go in, there's nothing here. And so I thought it was kind of funny that to walk around the glorified transgender district in San Francisco, there's no art, there's no culture, there's no beautiful murals, there's no nothing. It's literally just drug addicts and homeless on the street, shit on the sidewalk, all sorts of seedy motels and bars that I definitely wouldn't go in, and all this stuff. And that's all it is. I was like, wow. Okay.
back all the time that are often overlooked. And I think that San Francisco is like a particularly special place.
It
when
is
comes
sad,
to
Yasmin.
history
It
of
is sad.
organizing. So I'm glad to be doing it here. I'm gonna do it anywhere.
Thank you both for sharing that.
Yeah, how are you feeling?
I am actually feeling today really good. I'm traveling without my.
That's
I'm
Rowan.
traveling by
Right.
myself for the first time since my daughter was born 11 years ago.
Okay, so I just want to point this out. Rowan, who is on the right here, Rowan is obviously a woman with a very masculine voice. Now, I want everyone to really pay attention to what I'm about to say. Rowan has a kid. I learned later in this presentation that kid is 11 years old, and it kind of sounds like Rowan is very concerned about whether or not their kid, who is about to go through puberty, is going to have access to trans-affirming hormones. And you will hear this later in the presentation. So I just want to point that out. Socialists, communists, queer Marxists, they have kids. They do have kids. And I don't know, it kind of sounds like in this case, some ideas may have gotten implanted in the mind of the child that may require some hormones or something like that. Okay? Listen.
And that is thrilling. And I'm down in the Bay and feeling really politically inspired by the things that are happening down here. Seeing some dear friends, had the honor of being at the celebration of life for Miss Major yesterday, and that was heartbreaking.
Rowan, by the way, I wish I had gotten a picture of this. Rowan also has a giant red star tattooed on their arm. Very communist tattoo.
Yeah, really powerful and precious. In general these days, though, I feel pretty scared and pissed off. I think it's a really scary time, and for a lot of people, and I think that's not necessarily. There's ways in which that's new, and there's ways in which that's not new, right? But I think a lot about my daughter, the world she's in, the fact that the kids in her class are having their parents snatched up and kidnapped by these fucking fascists, right? The fact that they're trying to send in the National Guard to increase the level of violence against resistance against deportations in Portland. And yeah, I'm really angry and scared about sort of the fascism being directed right now, particularly against immigrant folks, but also really.
I bet Rowan's really feeling the fascism right now. I bet Rowan is really feeling the fascism now that I'm playing their recording of their presentation they didn't know they were being recorded on for the internet because they wrongly kicked me out of their event. And had they just left me alone, maybe a couple of clips would have come out, but certainly not the whole presentation. But now they've done pissed me off. And you know what? Like maybe I'll just get a little bit more fascist if the commies piss me off by not allowing me to just peacefully be at their event and ask them important questions.
I think it's a scary time for trans people, especially. I'm really scared for myself, for my kid, for my lovers, for my community. I was worried about the travel documents I had to get.
For my lovers. What does that mean? Rowan just said, I'm worried about my kid, my community, my lovers. What does that mean? Pop quiz for the chat. Rowan is a queer Marxist, obviously. Not polygamy, polyamory. Yeah, they're polyamorous. They're queering their relationships. They're in a polycule.
Down here this weekend, I'm worried about my daughter being forced to go through the potential torture of a dysphoric puberty. And I'm worried that
I'm worried about my daughter.
a lot of us are for a lot of people. And I think
I'm worried about my daughter having to go through the potential torture of a dysphoric puberty. So was Rowan's kid born a boy and is now living as a girl? Or is Rowan anticipating that his daughter may become his son or his they them? We don't know. We have no idea. Has Rowan's kid already transitioned? Or is this an unanticipated transition? We don't know.
that's not necessarily, there's ways in which that's new and there's ways in which that's not new, right? But, you know, I think a lot about my daughter, the world she's in, the fact that her, the kids in her class are having their parents snatched up and kidnapped by these fucking fascists, right? The fact that they're trying to send in the National Guard to increase the level of violence against resistance against deportations in Portland. And yeah, I'm really angry and scared about sort of the fascism being directed right now, particularly against immigrant folks. But also really, I think it's a scary time for trans people especially. I'm really scared for myself, for my kid, for my lovers, for my community. I was worried about the travel documents I had to get down here this weekend. I'm worried about my daughter being forced to go through the potential torture of a dysphoric puberty. And I'm worried that a lot of us are not going to make it through this. I think we're in a moment that feels like a culmination and a result of years of anti-trans backlash. And it really feels...
I mean, so OC is saying, just imagine the deprogramming that is going to have to be done. It's mind-boggling. Guys, these people live in a very different world than we live in. We could be presented with exactly the same circumstance, and we are going to see things completely differently than these people do. And it's like, you cannot deprogram people from a cult that they don't want to leave. And by the way, they all think that we're in the cult. So they see us in exactly the same way that we see them. They are just as afraid of us as we are that they're going to fuck everything up and destroy our entire way of life. They are just as, and I really want people to think about this. This is not an insignificant problem. You are not going to be able to unindoctrinate people from the far left cult, not in any significant number. I'm very sorry. You can't go to them and say, excuse me, do you know that everything you believe is wrong? You can't do that. It's not going to work. They don't care. They don't agree with you. And so it's like, if we don't start getting smarter about how to get ahead of this thing, there is no solving this problem, because these people are brainwashed to believe a completely different reality. That is why in their world, it is perfectly fine to kick me out of an event where I'm literally not doing anything, because they pinky swear, trust us, bro. She doxed people the last time when I didn't even record people the last time. It's like they will make shit up and they will twist reality so that it bends and adheres to whatever story they want to tell to uphold their worldview, because that is how embedded the worldview is. They're not stupid. They're not mentally ill. They're not lazy and just want stuff for free. They're not useful idiots. These people are fully indoctrinated and bought into this view of the world.
In a lot of ways, like, you know, in my experience, trans people, particularly trans women, for a really long time for years have been saying, this is coming, please pay attention to what's happening in Texas, please pay attention to what's happening in Oklahoma, please pay attention to what's happening in Florida. This is coming for everybody. And largely, with exceptions, of course, that matter in everyone's lives, largely it feels like cis people have been like out to fucking lunch about what's happening. And that isolation has in some ways felt like the scariest part of it. That they're gonna do this and no one gives a shit, right? And I don't think that's an experience that's unique to trans people, but it is an experience that I think a lot of trans people are having. And I'm gonna be real sort of in the doomerism of it. Right now, to me, the project of trans extermination, which is the rights project, right, is to...
This is fucking wild. Rowan tells a room of people that it is the right's goal to exterminate trans people. Listen.
Just with exceptions, of course, that matter in everyone's lives, largely it feels like cis people have been like out to fucking lunch about what's happening. And that isolation has in some ways felt like the scariest part of it. That they're gonna do this and no one gives a shit, right? And I don't think that's an experience that's unique to trans people, but it is an experience that I think a lot of trans people are having. And I'm gonna be real sort of in the doomerism of it. Right now, to me, the project of trans extermination, which is the rights project, right, is to destroy us, is to, at best, force us back into sort of living as the dysphoric hellgenders that we had to navigate earlier in our lives, right?
By dysphoric hellgenders, he means men. I'm sorry, she. My fault. I misgendered. My bad. It's the voice. Sorry. When Rowan, she, her says dysphoric hellgenders, she, her means men and women. This is how they view the gender binary. They call them dysphoric hellgenders.
That they're gonna do this and no one gives a shit, right? And I don't think that's an experience that's unique to trans people, but it is an experience that I think a lot of trans people are having. And I'm gonna be real sort of in the doomerism of it. Right now, to me, the project of trans extermination, which is the rights project, right, is to destroy us, is to, at best, force us back into sort of living as the dysphoric hellgenders that we had to navigate earlier in our lives, right? And yeah, the extermination and getting rid of us is the project. And it feels to me right now, after, as I've said, like after all this time of sort of preparing or not being prepared for this, right? Trans extermination feels a lot like climate change, right? It's too late to stop it. But we still...
Trans extermination is like climate change, guys. Too late to do nothing about it. Can't stop it. We're absolutely all going to die as a result of climate change. All the trans people are going to get exterminated. According to them, I don't think that that's true. Personally, I don't think that's true. But that is the world that they live in. Ray for $5 over on Rumble. Have a beer on me, Dr. K. Glad to see you streaming and safe. Thanks for all you do. I appreciate that, Ray. Thanks so much.
Still have a responsibility to fight like hell to navigate it in a way that minimizes the harm done to people. And that is not, that doesn't feel cheery to me, particularly as a parent of a kid who is entering puberty really soon and trying to figure out, is she gonna have access to the healthcare she needs? But we have to fight with hope or without. I think the next question we have here is sort of thinking about how is gender central to right-wing politics. that are emerging to dominate this moment. And particularly, it really feels like sort of the targeting of trans people feels really like a strategic focus.
Yeah,
for the
I
right.
have a copy of it.
If folks have thoughts
Rowan handed out the zine at the thing, so I actually have a physical copy of it.
or analyses around that, and folks can, with any of these questions, answer or as they want or leave it. Interested in y'all's take.
I mean, I'm always stunned by the threat that we as trans people apparently pose to these right-wing forces. I mean, clearly there's a lot of scapegoating going on, just as we saw 30 years ago with teachers getting fired for, similar, like bringing up subjects that were that the state took issue with or was trying to use as a wedge between people who are trying.
Hang on, we got a super chat. Let me see here. Thank you, Mike, for the super chat. Question: I've heard these people really don't. Excuse me. I've heard these people really don't care about authority and oppression as long as they're the ones being the authority or doing the oppression. This true? Nope, not true at all. Actually, so what you're talking about is more of a right-wing perspective. It's like a conservative interpretation of it. Their goal is to eliminate all hierarchy. And so they consider oppression to be created by hierarchy. All hierarchy creates oppression. Capitalism creates all hierarchies. Hierarchies being when some people have more resources than others. So I would not say that they care more about authority. It's like it's hard to understand the governance model that they want if you don't understand the culture of the far left. It's very much a collectivist governance model. Now, it's not going to work. But the governance model that they have, it's basically like a rotating group of leaders. So there have to be people that are heading up certain projects, but they actually are quite mindful when they talk about this, about not wanting people to be in leadership positions forever. So it's like cycling through short-term leadership, which has its own set of problems, right? Because it's like then you can't actually be an expert on things, which means we're all going to fucking starve. But no, I think that what you have is more of a right-wing interpretation. It's not how they see things. But I appreciate the question.
And to build power. But just because we have a historical precedent doesn't make it any less.
Hang on, we got another super chat. Thank you. When he says hell genders, does he mean everyone who is not non-binary? Yes, basically. Or is he referring to living as a birth gender against their will? He's referring to both, because remember, they believe that men and women are socially constructed categories created by capitalism. Capitalism created these fictional categories of men and women, put men in the workplace where they had all the power, all the money, women in the home doing the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of proletarians in the nuclear family. By the way, they're going to talk about the family in this presentation, and that's when it gets really wild. But so they believe that living in the gender binary is living in capitalism, is living in a patriarchal society, is living in oppression, yada, 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 yada. So yeah, they consider non-binary to basically be the only option. But of course, there's a wide spectrum of things in there. But I would also say that, like, one of the things the Rowan seems to be referring to is a fear of being forced to live in your birth gender or whatever. So maybe both are right. Appreciate the question.
Depressing, and like you said, it will be. I mean, this time it's life-ending for some people. Like people who are trans are committing suicide. Unfortunately, like it's not a good time. But I am heartened to be doing work with Gay Shame, with other people that are doing the work that needs to be done.
So, Gay Shame, for people who don't know, Gay Shame is like an old school queer activist organization. I think they were created either in the late 90s or like the early 2000s, something like that. But these are old school, like, militant queer activists that came directly out of like the ACT UP tradition.
I think it's interesting, a couple things that were said. I think, oh, sorry, can people hear me? I think it was interesting with a couple things that were said because the sort of missing part of the equation now versus like 10 years ago feels like how cooperative
Yeah.
liberals have been, or whatever you want to call them, people that aren't consider themselves part of the right, which I don't know how many, you know.
Oh,
And I think
you gotta listen to this. Hang on. So the person on the left is about to do a whole rant about how much they hate liberals and about how liberals don't support them and liberals are bad and liberals are this and liberals are that and liberals are the other thing. It's a whole fuck off rant about how much these people hate liberals.
Stunned by the threat that we as trans people apparently pose to these right-wing forces. I mean, clearly there's a lot of scapegoating going on.
And I just want to say this for the record in case any of the communists from the event listen to this later, because I'm sure they will. They're fucking narcissists, like whatever. They're pissed off at me, so whatever. So I just want to say this. I don't actually personally care if people are trans. It actually doesn't matter to me at all. I do not care if people are trans. I have trans people in my community. They get treated like everyone else. We make fun of them like everyone else, but they get treated like everyone else because everyone gets made fun of, and that's just the way it is. But it's like literally no one fucking cares. We don't care that you are trans. We care that you are communist and trying to fuck up our entire society. If you were not communist, then I would have absolutely no issue and I wouldn't have secretly recorded you. But like your whole fucking ideology is queer Marxism. It's about communism and you know it and we know it. So can we just drop the bullshit? No one gives a flying fuck that you're trans.
Just as we saw 30 years ago with teachers getting fired for, you know, similar, like bringing up subjects that were the state took issue with or was trying to use as a wedge between people who are trying to build power. But just because we have a historical precedent doesn't make it any less depressing. And like you said, it will be. I mean, this time it's life-ending for some people. Like people who are trans.
Hang on. You're not interpreting correctly. So Dusty says, when communists say they want the collective to own private property as the collective, the government, you're not interpreting what they mean correctly. They don't believe in ownership. What they believe is prior to the land being privatized by the evil bourgeois capitalists, is that it was under the caretakership of the collective, that everyone just had access to it and everyone used it and everyone took personal responsibility for caretaking it and yada, 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 yada. So they don't view it ownership like you're thinking of it. They view it as the land gets returned to everyone. There doesn't need to be a government to oversee it. It just gets returned to everyone and everyone is responsible to the collective.
Are, you know, committing suicide, unfortunately, like it's not a good time. But I am heartened to be doing work with Gay Shame, with other people, you know, that are doing the work that needs to be done.
I mean, I think it's interesting, a couple things that were said. I think, oh, sorry, can people hear me? I think it was interesting with a couple things that were said because the sort of missing part of the equation now versus like 10 years ago feels like how cooperative liberals have been, or whatever you want to call them, people that aren't consider themselves part of the right, which I don't know how many, you know. And I think
Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, sure. That's a good example. Who's had like, transphobes and like what's his name?
Charlie
the neck was on the thing before.
Gavin Newsom's podcast.
Yeah. So like that's how I know it. And I feel like that is it. There's like when we say like how is gender handled on the right, I feel like it's not really that different from liberals in terms of like I don't really think, and I mean you see this now, and I think this is what's shocking to most people is that like liberals never cared about trans people or whatever you want to call it, whatever group of people.
Liberals never cared about trans people because liberals just wanted to exploit gay people and exploit trans people to use them for capitalism because we are not watching liberals, we are watching queer Marxists. Does everyone understand the difference between a liberal and a queer Marxist? And does everyone understand that queer Marxists, the farthest of the far left, they do not like liberals. They do not like Democrats. They do not like progressives. They do not believe that any of these people were on their team. They do not believe that any of these people supported them ever. You're not hearing it from me. You're hearing, I recorded this hours ago. They're telling you what they believe.
I'm heartened to build power. But just because we have a historical precedent doesn't make it any less depressing. And like you said, it will be, I mean, this time it's life-ending for some people. Like people who are trans are, you know, committing suicide, unfortunately. Like it's not a good time. But I am heartened to be doing work with Gay Shame, with other people, you know, that are doing the work that needs to be done.
I mean, I think it's interesting a couple things that were said. I think, oh sorry, can people hear me? I think it was interesting with a couple things that were said because the sort of missing part of the equation now versus like 10 years ago feels like how cooperative liberals have been, or whatever you want to call them, people that aren't consider themselves part of the right, which I don't know, you know. And I think
just said that this is the person on the left. They just said they don't know why liberals don't consider themselves to be part of the right, because to these people, Democrats, liberals, and progressives are on the right.
Newsom,
yeah, sure. That's a good example of who's had like, you know, transphobes.
Like
and,
Gavin
what's
Newsom.
his name? The neck was on the thing before.
Gavin Newsom had Charlie Kirk on his podcast, and so therefore, ergo, Gavin Newsom is on the right. Did everyone catch that? Let's just listen again.
Yeah. Needs to be done.
I mean, I think it's interesting a couple things that were said. I think, oh sorry, can people hear me? I think it was interesting with a couple things that were said because the sort of missing part of the equation now versus like 10 years ago feels like how cooperative liberals have been, or whatever you want to call them, people that aren't consider themselves part of the right, which I don't know, you know. And I think
Gavin Newsom,
yeah, sure. That's a good example of who's had like, you know, transphobes and like what's his name?
Charlie Kirk.
The neck was on the thing before.
Gavin Newsom's podcast.
Yeah. So like that's how I know it. And I feel like that is it. There's like when we say like how is gender handled on the right, I feel like it's not really that different from liberals in terms of like I don't really think, and I mean you see this now, and I think this is what's shocking to most people is that like liberals never cared about trans people or whatever you want to call it, whatever group of people we want to call the good Germans, whatever you think. I mean, right, which is
The
like,
good Germans.
I kind of forget was like the most important part.
They equate, this was wild. They equate the liberals to the good Germans who did more to support Hitler than anyone else. Liberals and Gavin Newsom and the Democrats are the good Germans to the queer Marxists.
Like transphobes and like what's his name?
Charlie Kirk.
The neck was on the thing before.
Gavin Newsom's podcast.
Yeah. So like that's how I know it. And I feel like that is it. There's like when we say like how is gender handled on the right, I feel like it's not really that different from liberals in terms of like I don't really think, and I mean you see this now, and I think this is what's shocking to most people is that like liberals never cared about trans people or whatever you want to call it, whatever group of people we want to call the good Germans, whatever. I mean, right, which is like people kind of forget was like the most important part of like the Third Reich and other kinds of colonial projects, right? It's always the well-meaning humanists, like you can't have colonization without the church, you know, like. So I guess I find it less that it's hard to feel like it's staged as that kind of antagonism when we like, framing it that way. Because I think there's this whole missing maybe kind of majoritarian project or whatever that's going on that is a longer project of colonialism that has always been, it's always kind of been like, because I think of a lot of the trans misogyny in particular, and I'm like, very little of it feels that new. It's not new, obviously, but it doesn't feel very new because I remember like 10 years ago fighting, particularly cis women, about these kinds of things. Including black cis women. Like there were a lot of really trans. And I don't know if those people still have those views or feel more enabled or more radical. I don't know. But it obviously kind of flowed into this moment. The other part of it, I think, which is worth always thinking about, is that like there aren't that many trans people, which people both think of as like which is a lot of ways we could think about this, which I think, to me, and this is maybe the more optimistic thing, it does feel very much like a sort of shock and awe campaign. Like I feel like it's very connected to declining U.S. militarism and the idea that, it's like we can't fight. I mean, in the U.S., it's like in terms of the U.S. military, like we can't fight Russia, we can't fight China, we're going to fight Nigeria or Venezuela. And I feel like there's a very similar kind of analogy again to targeting trans people, which is like how can we pick this group that is very unlikely to have sort of systematic power to fight us back, and that is pretty easy to make into, I think, use the word scapegoating because there's just not that many trans. Not to say, like, yes, we've always been here type of thing, but, and so there is a way in which I think of it as like a very obvious weakness and a kind of like, sign that there in certain ways isn't the kind of power that they think they have, but, people can disagree with that. I mean, I think it's interesting to talk about. So
I agree.
Yeah, I think I mean it is a kind of interesting project. The other side of it, lastly, too, because it kind of made me think of something you said about the kind of space of fear. I think whenever we talk about what we're going to lose, we should always talk about what we actually had. What did we really have? And I don't think any of these things we had. And again, most people are going to point to like jobs or rights, citizenship. And it's like you never had those. Like these things were.
Hang on. Why did the far left get so into communist and Marxist ideology? The schools. The schools. The schools have been pushing this shit for decades and decades and decades. It started in the colleges and universities when the Frankfurt School came over and set up shop at Columbia in the 30s, even before World War II was over. From Columbia, it bled out into the Ivy Leagues. From the Ivy Leagues, it bled out into the other colleges and universities for decades and decades and decades. Who produces the K through 12 school teachers? The colleges and universities. So once this stuff bled into the colleges of education, where you're literally training the teachers, you have 1, 2, possibly 3 generations of teachers in this country that were taught in a far left environment that don't know anything differently than far left ideology, that is what makes its way into their K through 12 classrooms because they aren't taught to teach differently. The left controls the people who train the teachers, and they've controlled them for a very long time. And now this shit is sprinkled all throughout public schools from the time they're in kindergarten. And I guarantee you, even in red states, I guarantee you, even in school districts where you think you control the school board, I guarantee you, even in states with anti-woke laws, they are still teaching this shit because the right doesn't understand what they're looking at. They don't understand what the left believes. They don't understand what they're doing. And so this shit just perpetuates in public schools because even though the left operates in the open all the time, no one on the right pays attention. And no one on the right does anything about it. and no one on the right actually even understands what they're talking about. And then I get attacked all the time by people on the right because I'm trying to fucking tell them, and they make me the enemy because I'm trying to get them to open their fucking eyes and see the truth. You want to know how it got so far? Because the right fucking allowed it to. Because the left was highly strategic about what they were doing. They've always been highly strategic. This is why it's dangerous to call them mentally ill or stupid or narcissists, because they are highly strategic about what they've been doing for decades, and no one on the right paid attention. That's how.
These were things owned by the state that it lends to you. Like, you never had any of these things, you know what I mean? Like, so, and I don't know, I can relate to one of your other questions, but I was thinking what Dee Dee talked about how there were like gay jobs back in the day, but maybe that's for a different topic, yeah. But like how people create systems that are, you know, don't often get registered or measured as things we have, but are like actually the reason we're here. And I mean, again, as a Black person, you look at the history of slavery, it's like Black people didn't own things, we were property. And like, that's actually, again, it's also where it's like organizing out of whiteness is, to me, not a successful project, which I think fear is very rooted in. I mean, I think whiteness is entirely like ontologically constructed from fear. Like that's
Whiteness, property ownership, did you hear the specific reference to property ownership, is entirely constructed by fear. Let's listen to that again.
what it is. Not that many transit, not to say, you know, like, yes, we've always been here type of thing, but, and so there is a way in which I think of it as like a very obvious weakness and a kind of like, you know, sign that there in certain ways isn't the kind of power that they didn't have, but, you know, people can disagree with that. I mean, I think it's an interesting thing to talk about. So
no, I agree.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it is a kind of interesting project. The other side of it, lastly, too, because it kind of made me think of something you said about the kind of space of fear. I think whenever we talk about what we're going to lose, we should always talk about like, what we actually had. What did we really have? And I don't think any of these things we had. And again, most people are going to, you know, point to like jobs or rights, citizenship. And it's like you never had those. Like these were things owned by the state that it lends to you. Like you never had any of these things. You know what I mean? Like so. And I don't know. I can relate to one of your other questions, but I was thinking what Dee Dee talked about how there were like gay jobs back in the day. But maybe that's for a different topic. Yeah. But like how people create systems.
Hey, bro. Less than 10 minutes ago in this presentation, you heard one of these presenters talking about how much they hate liberals. Do you want to know why the left is winning and the right is losing? Because the right doesn't fucking listen. One of the people in this presentation just went on a giant fuck off rant about how much they hate liberals. Liberals don't help them. They don't agree with liberals. They don't like liberals. They consider liberals to be the good Germans. They consider them to be on the right. And you heard that, and your first thought went to white liberal women are the problem. That has nothing to do with this. The left wins because the right doesn't fucking listen.
You know, don't often get registered or measured as things we have, but are like actually the reason we're here. And I mean, again, as a Black person, you look at the history of slavery, it's like Black people didn't own things, we were property. And like, that's actually, again, it's also where it's like organizing out of whiteness is, to me, not a successful project, which I think fear is very rooted in. I mean, I think whiteness is entirely like ontologically constructed from fear. Like that's what it is. You know, you can go to like the root of what the definition of property is. It's like this paranoid defense. Anyway.
Go to the root of what the definition of property is, and there's a paranoid defense. This person is telling you whiteness means property ownership. Whiteness means capitalism. Whiteness is not about your skin color. They said it, and they said it quickly, but I want everyone to listen to this. This is a queer Marxist telling you whiteness means capitalism. Whiteness means property ownership. Capitalism means property ownership.
So like you never had any of these things, you know what I mean? Like so, and I don't know, I can relate to one of your other questions, but I was thinking what Dee Dee talked about how there were like gay jobs back in the day, but maybe that's for a different topic.
No. This is the last retard thing you're going to say in my fucking chat. Liberals don't understand this. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. It's you retards who refuse to fucking listen and refuse to fucking understand. Say one more retard thing in my chat, you're going to get permanently banned. I'm not putting up with this shit today. Again.
It's to talk about.
So no, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it it is a kind of interesting project. The other side of it, lastly, too, because it kind of made me think of something you said about the kind of space of fear. I think whenever we talk about what we're going to lose, we should always talk about what we actually had. What did we really have? And I don't think any of these things we had. And again, most people are going to, point to like jobs or rights, citizenship. And it's like you never had those.
Because they are referring to a specific aspect of capitalism. They all understand this. You do not, because you do not listen to the context in which they speak. They are referring to a single aspect of capitalism. Just like when they say patriarchy, they are referring to another aspect of capitalism. When they say normativity or heteronormativity, they're referring to another aspect of capitalism. It's always referring to a different aspect of capitalism. Yes, I am. You are the ones who do not understand. Liberals don't work with these groups. These groups don't work with liberals. They are different groups. You are the one who doesn't fucking know what the fuck you're talking about.
Like these things are things, and so there is a way in which I think of it as like a very obvious weakness and a kind of like, sign that there in certain ways isn't the kind of power that they didn't have, but people can disagree with that. I mean, I think it's interesting to talk about. So
I agree.
Yeah, I think I mean it is a kind of interesting project. The other side of it, lastly, too, because it kind of made me think of something you said about the kind of space of fear. I think whenever we talk about what we're going to lose, we should always talk about what we actually had. What did we really have? And I don't think any of these things we had. And again, most people are going to, point to like jobs or rights, citizenship. And it's like you never had those things. Like these were things owned by the state that it lends to you. Like you never had any of these things. You know what I mean? Like so, and I don't know, I can relate to one of your other questions, but I was thinking what Dee Dee talked about how there were like gay jobs back in the day. But maybe that's for a different topic. Yeah. But like how people create systems that are, don't often get registered or measured as things we have, but are like actually the reason we're here. And I mean, again, as a Black person, you look at the history of slavery, it's like Black people didn't own things, we were property. And like that's actually, again, it's also where it's like organizing out of whiteness is, to me, not a successful project, which I think fear is very rooted in. I mean, I think whiteness is entirely like ontologically constructed from fear. Like that's what it is. You can go to like the root of what the definition of property is. It's like this paranoid defense. Anyway, so I think there is something to be said about fear. Would be an interesting thing to talk about because it's very also part of the rights project. And go back to Hobbes or whoever. Anyway.
So, thank you so much. And I'm really, I'm really appreciating what you said about, I don't hear it enough, but like the rejection of trans rights as a framework, and that, I feel like people really like throw that language around in a way that's really like not thought about. Like, of course we want rights, and it's possible that our liberation struggles don't actually need to fit within the context of these sort of liberal statist categories. So.
Well, Trump 1 says, are these people capable of self-introspective and change in a positive sense? Well, let me turn that around on you. Are Trump supporters and MAGA voters capable of self-introspective and change? Because right now, Trump supporters, MAGA supporters, conservatives, they have no fucking idea what the left is saying and doing because they refuse to hinge into reality and listen to the left. So you want them to change? Perhaps you're the one that needs to change. Perhaps your friends and your community are the ones that need to change. Perhaps it's people on the right that need to start hinging into reality with what the left believes and what the left is doing and what is going to be required to actually stop the left. You want to change them? You need to start by changing your fucking selves.
So thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if, I come from a political tradition that sees like both a lot of continuity, but also a lot of rupture, and sometimes even antagonism between the fascist far right and sort of the neoliberal capitalist ruling class. So
the collaboration between the fascist right and the neoliberal ruling class. They literally believe that liberals are fascists.
That, I feel like people really like throw that language around in a way that's really like not thought about. like, of course, we want rights, and it's possible that our liberation struggles don't actually need to fit within the context of these sort of liberal statist categories. So thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if, I come from a political tradition that sees like both a lot of continuity, but also a lot of rupture, and sometimes even antagonism between the fascist far right and sort of the neoliberal capitalist ruling class. So, I think it's both, and there can be like a lot of nuance and debate about which one of those is primary in a particular moment. One thing you said that really jumped out for me is like that liberals don't give a shit about trans people, right? They don't care about this stuff for the most part. And I think that's right. And to me, that's maybe one of the differences between liberals and the far right, right? Is liberals don't care about us. The far right really does.
I would actually say I think liberals care about us to the extent that they can stop us from organizing. Because I think the nonprofit landscape in San Francisco comes from that. Like that's why we are managed as a service population. So it's kind of like, would you rather be, there's like a Palestinian, I forget who said it, was like, would you rather be killed by the knife or the scarf, or some paraphrasing, right? It is really that. It is like liberals are killing us with a scarf. It's a silk scarf.
Totally.
It's it's Pucci or Chanel or whoever, it's very nice.
Liberals are just killing them nicer than conservatives because they're doing it with a really nice designer silk scarf.
Yeah, sorry. So I think it's worth clarifying, because I think you're like, in a way they are obsessed historically, just in a very different way. That's interesting.
Well, and I wonder if that's also like a San Francisco thing. Like, not that that's just here, but it definitely seems like those ways in which like trans liberalism, like San Francisco maybe seems in some ways like playing this vanguard role.
Cynthia with the Prime membership. Thanks, Cynthia, queen of the chat again. W Cynthia, everyone who got a channel membership, congratulations. Everyone send appreciation to Cynthia.
In a way that doesn't even seem true to the same extent in Portland, even, right? Like Portland definitely doesn't have trans flags painted in the neighborhoods that they're trying to recolonize. Which I saw yesterday. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Good question. Good question. They don't talk about North Korea at all, so I don't really know what they think about North Korea. They just don't talk about it. They do not believe China is communist. They believe China is capitalist. So no, this is not Maoism. This is not the CCP. This is not any of that. Like, it's not related to that at all. And anyone who says that they're doing Maoism with American characteristics is lying. They denounce Mao all the time. They denounce China all the time. China's capitalist.
Why do I have feelings? But yeah, it seems to me that.
Okay, socialists wear masks because they still believe that COVID is a real thing, and they believe they need to protect the immunocompromised. It is their responsibility as good members of the collective or good comrades to engage in community care to protect other people. It's not about protecting their identity. They do that sometimes. If they're at a protest or something like that, they will definitely want to protect their identity with a mask. But remember, this was their private event. It's their private event. Okay, they all know each other. And they're still wearing masks because the speakers are, everyone knows who the speakers are. Their names are in the program. So they're not protecting their identity. Okay. It's about community care. It is about they believe it is their responsibility to care for everyone as part of the collective.
Thinking about the far right, and again, with nuance about how much it's a break and a rupture and how much it's a continuation, that gender is really at the core of what they're doing. Obviously not alone, not gender over race, nation, class, but definitely at the core of it, right? And very much sort of the affect of this is about sort of a virile and warrior masculinity in the face of sort of the decadence and weakness of the decaying sort of neoliberal order, right? And a return to specifically enforcing rigid heterosexual sort of family forms, white heterosexual family forms on folks, and really kind of doing what they can to block off any escape routes from that. So yeah, then I think the neoliberals want a rainbow capitalism, right, where every possible
Rainbow
gender and
capitalism.
sexuality are commodified for market profit.
So rainbow capitalism is why they don't like the liberals. They believe that the liberals and the Democrats just use the pride flag in order to engage in capitalism and get the gays and the queers to spend more money with them. That's what they mean when they say, they actually gave a specific definition of rainbow capitalism that's good.
And weakness of the decaying sort of neoliberal order, right? And a return to specifically enforcing rigid heterosexual sort of family forms, white heterosexual family forms on folks, and really kind of doing what they can to block off any escape routes from that. So yeah, then I think the neoliberals want a rainbow capitalism, right, where every possible gender and sexuality are commodified for market profit, and the right wants to destroy every possible escape from the prison of the heterosexual white family and exterminate those of us who see.
Here it is.
or
This
embody
is
it.
this is so fucking good. The right wants to prevent every possible escape from, what did he say? The neoliberal white heterosexual family. This is where they start to get into some of the abolish the family stuff.
Enforcing rigid heterosexual sort of family forms, white heterosexual.
And by the way, just so people are clear, because there might be some new people listening, when they say heterosexual, they do not mean between a man and a woman. They mean capitalist. They mean people engaging in a monogamous capitalist relationship. They believe the same thing of gay people. They call it homonormativity. And so they're not saying, when they're saying heterosexual, they're not saying, I know this might sound weird, they're not saying man and woman. They're referring to people who are engaging in a capitalist form of propertied relationship through marriage that is sanctioned by the state. They're getting capitalist jobs. They're raising their kids with capitalist values. This is what social reproduction theory is. It's the idea that the capitalist family will continue to reproduce the system of capitalism, the cultural system of capitalism. So that's what they're saying. Okay, does everyone understand that? You have to learn to code switch when you're listening to the left.
Well, that's not a role in terms of translation.
Listen again.
In a way that doesn't even seem true to the same extent in Portland. Even, right? Like Portland definitely doesn't have trans flags painted in the neighborhoods that they're trying to recolonize. Which I saw yesterday. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this, but boy, do I have feelings. But yeah, it seems to me that, thinking about the far right, and again, with nuance about how much it's a break and a rupture and how much it's a continuation, that gender is really at the core of what they're doing. Obviously not alone, not gender over race, nation, class, but definitely at the core of it, right? And very much sort of the affect of this is about sort of a virile and warrior masculinity in the face of sort of the decadence and weakness of the decaying sort of neoliberal order, right? And a return to specifically enforcing rigid heterosexual sort of family forms, white heterosexual family forms on folks, and really kind of doing what they can to block off any escape routes from that.
Hang on. You must be new, Dusty. We like new people, but you need to understand that there's a lot that you need to learn. You are not in any position to counter anyone's argument. First off, if you go to a leftist meeting and you go, hey guys, do you know real communism has never been tried? They're going to laugh in your face and they don't care what you have to say. So This is about learning about the left and all that stuff. Yeah, I heard about this. Also, Jennifer is going to have to postpone movie night until I'm done this stream. I'm calling in. Someone needs to tell Jennifer that I need her to hold off on movie night until I'm done this stream. I'll try to get it wrapped up as quickly as I can, but we're going to be a little bit over. It's not my fault, okay? It is my fault, but that's all right. Whatever. It's my Discord.
So, yeah, then I think the neoliberals want a rainbow capitalism, right, where every possible gender and sexuality are commodified for market profit, and the right wants to destroy every possible escape from the prison of the heterosexual white family and exterminate those of us who seek or embody alternatives to it.
Yeah, I mean, so far as going
Jennifer
to
right now.
the Department of Justice trying to make it evidence of a crime that you are carrying around an anti-fascist zine, to things like the I think it's Bureau of Prisons, like apparently made remarks to administrators of prisons that they should stop enforcing the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which itself, under this rubric of rights, has not stopped rape in prisons, but just that they've gone so far as to target people with no recourse inside. It shows how desperate the state is becoming.
Yeah, and there's a real, I feel like part of that sort of masculine affect that's at the center of fascism is sort of a sadism and a cruelty that is always there, but I think is sort of unleashed to be celebrated.
Fascism is very masculine, guys. It's cruel because it's so masculine.
Explicitly in ways that, often.
But just that they've gone so far as to target people with no recourse inside. It shows how desperate the state is becoming.
Yeah, and there's a real, I feel like part of that sort of masculine affect that's at the center of fascism is sort of a sadism and a cruelty that is always there, but I think is sort of unleashed to be celebrated explicitly in ways that, oftentimes sort of a more neoliberal bourgeois version of white supremacy wants to pretend to be polite about it.
It's an interesting one though when you look at white women, right? There's that Sophie Lewis book who you interviewed.
Sophie Lewis
where it's
mentioned.
that is almost feels like there are more women represented in the far right, white women. But I mean, I guess there's some sisters out there. There's some non-white women, of course, too. But I think it's kind of interesting because you think of that whole kind of Hillary moment or whatever. There was white women out there, but it's all the kind of right-wing white women is it is an interesting thing. It's it feels like that is also a meeting point where there's very much a similar logic of a kind of protection of white women. Because also the way it's being framed, right? The bathroom thing is always I think this is Dean Spade term where he's the subject of national protection, which I feel like is absolutely white women, maybe white kids too. And it very much feels like that's kind of who it feels very equally. I mean, I don't know, people could do a percentage study or whatever, but there's so many prominent white women, including the one who defended, I mean, we won't bring that Epstein file, but the Megan, what's her name? Kelly, and all those, all these kind of very right-wing white women that are very essential to this project of colonialism and always have been. I mean, there's books about says that was it her property, the one about slavery. I don't think that's the right title, but so it's kind of an interesting. I think it's an interesting object of a session, and it is when you look at white women. I think it is much more of what I was saying of where the mask falling off type of thing because it really.
So I was just thinking about this because it's so funny sometimes when you hear activists that you watched online get shouted out in the real world. So it's like, this is how we know Sophie Lewis is relevant. They talk about her in the real world. This is how we know how Dean Spade is relevant. They talk about they, them in the real world. When like real activists get shouted out, it's like, holy shit, this is actually real. Okay. And so one of the things I want to make mention of is like, where the fuck was I going with this? Oh, do you guys remember a couple weeks ago when I found that big stash of anti-ICE organizing PDFs? And I found these PDFs and I connected them with like anti-ICE organizing groups all over the country. Do you guys remember that? So basically, for people who don't know, I found a big fuck off like leftist database of anti-ICE organizing stuff. But then the question becomes, is this stuff actually being used in the real world? Or is it just some crazy person putting things on the internet? Well, guess what? There was a communist coffee shop 2 blocks away from where this event was today. And I know that because I went there to get a latte prior to the event. So, and it was a full-on commie coffee shop too. It was crazy. But on the counter at the commie coffee shop, they actually had a printed out version of one of those PDFs, the one that was specifically made for the Bay Area. So that is actual proof that that archive that I found, that wasn't just some random fucking person. Those PDFs are actually they're actually being used in the real world today. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, latte actually wasn't bad, if I'm honest about it.
It feels like the same kind of people. And I mean, again, not that we have to keep talking about her, but Hillary, like she's like it feels like has pretty much the same values as most of them. Who I think would have been the example of the kind of neoliberal, because the Clintonite project, people very much was part of neoliberalism. So it's, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know that it's a central, I don't see it as necessarily a central gender affect.
I need to pee. I'll be right back.
Because I also feel like people make the complaint that, especially in the Bay, but this is global, is like, I don't know what you want to call that, but the kind of like revenge of the nerds affect that is very common with like Elon Musk and those people. And who, again, that's a very prominent online transphobe who, has a trans kid, right? Like, I don't know who to show him. And like, I think that's also an interesting, if we were even to characterize masculinity, I mean, that is very fun because it feels like it's very much like a Reddit, people call it like a Reddit government, whatever. Like, it's very true. Like, it is that kind of like actual keyboard warrior is probably the better term than warrior. Like, it's not a dude fighting in a war, it's like a dude tweeting, a white dude tweeting. So it is even at the level of the kind of masculinity project, very interesting. And it feels like that does feel deeply tied to like, maybe people would disagree with this, but like a singular sort of white colonial gender. Because I don't really see much difference in the colonial project between white men and white women. Like, I think it's a very similar kind of coeval project. And like, it feels like it comes home to roost in those kinds of figures where people are like, this is this nerd who's yelling on stage. I'm like, yay, like literally like one of those like Simpsons cutaways or something. And it's like, this is the moment of fascism equally, if not arguably more importantly, because, that is all the tech people here who are financing all the right-wing campaigns like Teal, who's gay, right? I mean, hello. And Musk and others, I'm sure you probably know a lot more than folks than me. But it's like, I think it's a very interesting way to like complicate the gender sort of, because less we get obsessed with like it's this kind of warrior thing, and then we like, if we exterminate that or whatever, if we confront that, it'll resolve that. And I think in a certain kind of way, that is among the other sort of like approaches white feminism took in the 60s, thinking that would do it, and that's why we're here too. So I don't know. It's just in response to that, I don't have a lot to say. But
That's really helpful. I think sort of wondering if we can think about, if we're thinking about gender in these complex and nuanced ways, is sort of central to right-wing politics. Also want to think a little bit about how our left-wing and social justice movements thinking about prioritizing and embodying a politics around gender, and what are some of sort of the strengths and weaknesses that we see there as, as particularly people try to build and rebuild an anti-fascist politics in the context of what feels like a much more sort of threatening and violent Trump administration. So how are the forces that are trying to push back against that? How are we doing gender or not? Or
Oh no, I'm happy to hear you. I mean, I think it's very clear that there is still even though it feels like we've gone back in terms of gender in so many ways, it still has a lot of purchase in the eyes of the state. I think we wouldn't have people like the senator from Delaware, who is like the first trans senator, Sarah McBride, who's, I mean, the first thing that
They do not like Sarah McBride either, because Sarah McBride is part of the capitalist Democrat Party.
I knew about her was about her Zionism and her AIPAC funding.
No, again, people keep saying it sucks they kicked me out. Honestly, I don't think this could have gone any better. I think this would have gotten much less attention had they not kicked me out. They also handed me a potential lawsuit. I mean, it's just like, this will get more attention because they kicked me out. And that's a good thing.
And she came through the Human Rights Campaign, which for a long time, there's been a critique around the Human Rights Campaign, which is a nonprofit that is very.
I'm really bummed they didn't let me ask questions, because it's like, I had a great question about this related to like the bashback movement and anti-assimilationist politics in the 2000s. The Human Rights Campaign really made a name for themselves in the 2000s when they were fighting for gay marriage. I would have asked a great question about this. And the event organizers were so selfish. They deprived everyone in the room of hearing my question. And again, the people on the panel would have fucking loved my question. They would have loved it. They would have loved answering it. Everyone would have had a great time. I would have gotten good recording. They would have got to talk about a subject they really like. It's like, if these people are not proud of their ideas and they don't want their ideas broadcast to the world, then perhaps they should change their ideas. But like, if they need to have meetings in secret where people can't hear what they have to say in a publicly funded building, at a publicly funded facility, at a supposedly public event, then perhaps maybe they should think about their ideas a little bit more. I can defend my ideas, and a lot of my ideas are deeply unpopular. Like burning books, not everyone wants to do that. I want to do that. Banning the publication of certain types of material, yeah, I want to fucking do that. Yeah, 100%. But like, I can defend my ideas. And if people want to disagree with me, that's fine. But I will get up in front of a room and talk about my ideas and not really care if someone's recording me, not care. Like, if someone's secretly recording me to put the presentation on the internet, good. Good. No, I just walked in. There was no ticketing. There was a voluntary donation, no ticketing, no fucking private event, held in a public college, taxpayer-funded college, the City College of San Francisco, and they kicked me out for doing fucking nothing. And I would have asked some really great questions, and it was really inconsiderate of the organizers to do that, and they just should have let it go.
A rights focus that is known to people who are doing organizing in the early 2000s as the organization that threw trans people under the bus because they were really pushing for employment equity, and they felt like in order to move that forward, they had to drop the T from all of the policies that they were pushing at the time. And I think it's it's it can be distracting. It can be distracting to have somebody who is trans in a position that is so closely tied to the state. I think about how in Minneapolis, after the city came close to dismantling the police department in Minneapolis after 2020, the person that had to deliver the news that no, in fact, we were not going to disband the police was Andrea Jenkins, who was the first Black trans city council member of Minneapolis, who seems like a very nice person, but like, of course, they picked her to, you know.
She's a very nice person, you know.
But she was the one to deliver the news to people in Minneapolis and the world that no, we need these cops. We need these killer cops.
I'm not sure. I mean, wait, what was the question again? Like, what'd you bring me again?
I think I was trying to frame a question about like how do we understand the gender politics of emerging left-wing or anti-fascist movements?
You know, jumping off of Toshio, I think I appreciate the aspirations to fight the right, which is interesting too, because we listened to, I think did you have a podcast where it was, oh no, that was your panel, where we were talking about like how it's moved from being a street thing to like, you know, now it's this, now like the same people, like the Proud Boys equivalent are like in the state, you know, like what's his name? Keyboard warrior, the vice president.
Andy, no.
Or no, the Higgs. I feel like he's like a keyboard warrior.
Exactly, keyboard warrior.
Is like, I think it still feels like, I mean,
Probably
this is why,
true, honestly.
it's not that neoliberal fascism or multicultural fascism is gone. It feels, I still see people hanging on to it. Like, what's his name in New York? I was like, I do not give a fuck about the Zionists winning an election. Like, I just could not like.
Here's where they shit talk Zoran Mandami, because remember, these are revolutionary communists. Revolutionary communists don't support the DSA. They don't like the DSA. They don't support elections. They don't vote in elections. No, they didn't vote for Kamala. No, they didn't vote for Biden. No, they didn't vote for Zoran. Well, these people are in California, so obviously they didn't vote for Zoran Mandami, but they're about to shit talk him pretty bad.
And it feels like that is the hope people will cling on to, and it's like that will always kill you. That I don't know how to say. And you could not tell people. It was worse. It was like Obama again. I was like, y'all really are doing this again? I mean, sorry, I don't think he's trans. Well, you know what? Maybe they them in a few years. We got to give listeners what they need. Or he'll do like the nails. I think it feels, and it's so, you know, I mean, I would connect, what's his name in New York, to that kind of project, which I do think they're going to like test to see like, oh, can we still do this? Or can we recoup anything from like the kind of neoliberal multicultural fascism moment? And I think that it still feels like within people, that is still, I feel like that is still the cop people can't get past type of thing. Like, because I think one of the things I've been sort of heartened by is like seeing, in terms of the right, is like seeing on the street, not, you know, I'm not saying, again, like I started, I don't think we're, you know, anyone, including myself, is like prepared for, you know, we should have been doing this for years, these kind of things, like all the ICE, anti-ICE collectivizations. But even those, like seeing people actually do that in like kind of random towns has been sort of, or sorry, to me, random towns that I've never.
Hey guys, just as an announcement, Jennifer is aware that she is postponing movie night for half an hour. So don't worry about running off to movie night. Movie night's going to start half an hour late. If you want to join us for a movie tonight, you can become a YouTube channel member. I'm about to post the Discord link out. So if you are not yet part of the supporter Discord and you're a channel member, because Cynthia or I think RD gifted a bunch of memberships. If someone gifted you a membership today, you'll be able to get into the supporter Discord. Join us tonight for movie night. I'm pretty sure it's Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, because Jennifer was trying to get me to like watch that, and then I pull the fast one and said I'm leaving for the weekend, but like I'll come in for movie night for a second, but I will be posting the link out to the community page or the post tab for channel members, so join the Discord, get verified. I will also be posting it to supporters on my Substack, in the chat function. So if you're a supporter on my Substack and you haven't yet joined, please follow the verification link and do so. Thanks, Matt, for becoming a member of the channel. You guys can check out the community tab in about 5 minutes or so. I'm just getting ready to post it now, but We're still listening to the presentation, and we're going to watch this first.
Has been very heartening in a way that I'm like, oh, these are people that are not letting the sort of like, you know, to use that term that, yeah, you know, this is constantly referring to internationally, rules-based order, whatever, like stop them from like stopping the state stealing your family members and things like that. And I think there is, to me, that is more, when I think about the future, that's what I'm more afraid of, is like, what are liberals going to invent to kill us differently? You know what I mean? Because they're always going to take what fascists have done, like all the cutbacks, all the anti-trans stuff. They're going to be like, well, why don't we leave that? You know, it's either fiscally necessary in whatever acceptable way they'll take it, such that.
Hey,
I'm
thanks,
really-
MCP.
That's kind of, so like seeing that New York election, I was like, y'all really falling for this shit again? Like, can we just stop doing like keep that shit in the closet in your home. Keep that, you know what? I don't need to see you celebrating that shit in public. Don't you? I mean, if anything, that should be the attitude. Go back in the closet. About electoralists, go back in the closet. You know, like, so I do think there's something to be said about that kind of what people call hope. You know, because I mean, it's you know, we constantly frame it as the other side of fear. I mean, there's just more complicated than that too, because you talked about fighting without hope or with hope, and I feel like, you know, to some degree, whatever you want to call hope, I don't think people would still be fighting if they didn't have something that we, you know, in retrospect are not call hope. But I do feel like attaching it to really awful projects is just, you know, it's the cruel optimism. It's really the way, like when you said anti-fascism, one of my thoughts has been seeing people in, you know, I don't know how I feel about this. I guess is in fascist institutions organizing anti-fascist things. I don't know how you know, I'm like, universities are fascist institutes. They're real estate projects.
Universities
Like,
are
that's literally the biggest lobby. That's bigger than, you know, maybe the arms manufacturers are bigger than that. But like, I don't know. I question like the limits of, you know, maybe or making anti-fascist organizing within fascist institutions. And I think that does go to like, when we think of this as a regressive moment, it's also a time to look back for trans people and queer people, like what actually kept us alive. Because it wasn't universities, it wasn't, I mean, again, Black people, again, if we're organized out of a history of Blackness, like those were things that are not available to Black people for hundreds of years, and we're still around. Which is also where I think some of the fear has to be checked by white people in particular. Like, yeah, I get it. You've had a lot of your life. You all have had extra shit a lot of your life. Like, it's really scary when someone takes one of your Teslas, because then you're like, what's gonna happen to the other one? I mean, again, as a metaphor, it's real. Like, that's very real. Like, you know, and it's a very different thing when you're kind of always used to being like, oh, I gotta park off the street because they're gonna reclaim my car. Like, if they see it in the driveway, you know, whatever strategies people have of survival. I think that's really where we have to look at these things. Like, I don't know if we have time, but I think the thing that Dee Dee talked about in your podcast was interesting. San Francisco, the podcast.
Yeah, well,
available on all platforms.
You know, I think this is a good way to think of it. Trump one says it's fascinating listening to their shared delusion. Yeah, especially queer Marxism. Queer Marxism is absolutely insane. It becomes a little less fun, though, when you understand that these people are winning and they're controlling the schools and they are teaching all your little darlings and they're winning and we're losing, as evidenced by the fact that so many students today believe that gender is a spectrum, gender is not biological, gender is not real, they can change their gender as easy as changing an outfit. They're winning and we're losing. So yes, do they have a shared delusion that is a fascinating shared delusion? Yeah, queer Marxism is some dystopian shit, man. Queer Marxism is as dystopian as it comes. But just remember, they're winning and we're losing. Becomes a little less fun then. Hey, thanks, Brooklyn. Good to see you.
Good podcast.
Yeah, I went on long.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Really helpful. I think there's a couple more questions, and then I think maybe open it up to some more general discussion. But the question, the next thing I had thought to talk about was how can trans movements and communities do better to meet this moment? I guess I can start this time. Oops. I think the far right sees trans people as a sort of monstrous threat to their world, as a force that will corrupt the youth with its decadence and destroy the natural order of patriarchal civilization. Right? And I think we have a choice as trans folks, as people trying to build trans politics, and as folks trying to sort of be supportive or allied to that project, of whether we view that as something to sort of hide from and try to engage in civil debate on NPR about how that's not actually true, or we can aspire to that, or we can aspire to be like the gender-fucked nightmare of the far right.
The gender-fucked
and that to me
nightmare of the far
is-
right. We can strive to be the gender-fucked nightmare of the far right. That was Rowan again. Donnie, thank you for the $50 super chat. I really do appreciate it. Aloha. Can't thank you enough for what you do. Thank you, Donnie, for allowing me to do it. I really appreciate all your support. I got a clip.
much more interesting
Not
as a
now.
project that we sort of embody
I want to go back.
our
Come on,
enemies'
back. There we go.
nightmare of patriarchal civilization. Right, and I think we have a choice as trans folks, as people trying to build trans politics, and as folks trying to sort of be supportive or allied to that project, of whether we view that as something to sort of hide from and try to engage in civil debate on NPR about how that's not actually true, or we can aspire to that, or we can aspire to be like the gender-fucked nightmare of the far right. And that to me is much more interesting as a project that we sort of embody our enemies' nightmares. So I think some of what that means is really letting go of this kind of trans-liberal framework of debate, of dialogue, of prioritizing sort of these abstract metaphysical questions around trans women are really women, or what pronouns make sense to use, or whatever, and realize this is not a debate, this is not a dialogue, this is a war for survival, and war is a material relationship, not just a discursive one.
They consider themselves to be in a war for their very survival, but I'm the bad guy for secretly recording them and giving their words a far bigger audience than it would have had otherwise. It's like, really just think about this. If you literally thought that you were in a war for your survival, wouldn't you want as many people to hear your ideas as possible? Communists. But no, not if a fascist is sharing it, not if an evil fascist is sharing it. Fascists are not allowed to share information because according to these guys, we're not real people.
So, and I think, I think it does matter in some ways, right? Like, it matters to me if my lovers view me as being a woman or not, right? It matters to me that my daughter has started calling me mom.
Rusty, you figured it out. The far left does not vote in elections. They do not vote for Democrats. They don't like Democrats. They tell people not to vote for Democrats. Hey, thanks, Matt. I appreciate the super chat. Listen, about to talk about they, them's daughter.
Instead of dad, right?
Daughter is now calling Rowan mom instead of dad.
Metaphysical questions around trans women are really women, or what pronouns make sense to use, or whatever, and realize this is not a debate, this is not a dialogue, this is a war for survival, and war is a material relationship, not just a discursive one. So, and I think, I think it does matter in some ways, right? Like, it matters to me if my lovers view me as being a woman or not, right? It matters to me that my daughter has started calling me mom instead of dad, right? It matters that my mom refers to me as her daughter, but that's like basically some personal shit. And the question of like, I am not trying to convince the world that I'm a real woman. I am trying to fight in the world to have access to the means of survival, right? Especially in this political moment, the healthcare necessary to medically transition, right?
So
Access to HRT, and that's not
really think about this again. This is what the right doesn't understand when they go, "What is a woman? You don't even know what a woman is." This person doesn't care what a woman is. This person doesn't care about being viewed by you, the evil fascists, as a woman. What this person cares about, the priority, is survival under capitalism and eventually overthrowing the system that is literally killing them. They believe this is life or death. That's what they believe. They believe capitalism is literally killing them. So again, it's like one of those things where when you go, "Oh, you don't even know what a woman is," it's like they actually don't give a flying fuck. They don't care. First of all, they think you made it up. They think that a woman is a made up socially constructed category based on capitalism. But furthermore, it's like they don't care about your owning the lib bullshit. They care about, we are literally fighting for our survival in capitalism, and we are in a war against the oppressors and stuff like that. They are literally afraid of dying, and whether or not they're actually in physical danger, which I would argue that they are not, especially that they them lives in Portland, they're not in any physical danger. But you have to understand that they believe this is real. They believe they are literally dying. Their lives are literally at stake all the time. Capitalism is literally trying to kill them. They don't give a flying fuck. You don't even know what a woman is. It's like,
and how do we frame that in a way that's not about rights, but is about having access to the means of our survival, right? Less lawsuits, more sex change stuff that we need, and that also means material struggle against prisons, against the police, for sort of the power, survival, and decriminalization of the lives and work of sex workers, and not just sort of pronoun go-arounds at corporate board meetings, right? So shifting from this sort of metaphysical discursive realm to a material struggle realm. And I think that also is connected to a view of like, trans communities are not monolithic, right? There's a lot of different experiences there. And how do we, I think in some ways, like it's a question of like, do we build a movement around the Sarah McBrides, or do we build a movement around the Miss Majors, right? Because those are really different experiences of trans womanhood that lead in really different political directions. So yeah, I think it's time to stop debating our humanity and start fighting for our ability to thrive. And also, I think this is scary, right? And I love everything you're continuing to bring up around the question of fear. But that, we need to let go of, both as trans people and as anti-fascists, let go of any kind of defense of sort of a rotting and dying status quo, right? That our project is not to defend democracy from the right. We don't want to defend the democracy. We also want to destroy.
Our project is not to defend democracy from the right. We don't want to defend democracy. We want to destroy the entire system. That's what queer is, guys.
This settler colonial.
Listen.
Or not just sort of pronoun go-arounds at corporate board meetings. Right? So shifting from this sort of metaphysical discursive realm to a material struggle realm. And I think that also is connected to a view of like, trans communities are not monolithic, right? There's a lot of different experiences there. And how do we, I think in some ways, like it's a question of like, do we build a movement around the Sarah McBrides, or do we build a movement around the Miss Majors, right? Because those are really different experiences of trans womanhood that lead in really different political directions. So yeah, I think it's time to stop debating our humanity and start fighting for our ability to thrive. And also, I think this is scary, right? And I love everything you're continuing to bring up around the question of fear. But that, we need to let go of, both as trans people and as anti-fascists, let go of any kind of defense of sort of a rotting and dying status quo, right? That our project is not to defend democracy from the right. We don't want to defend the democracy. We also want to destroy this settler colonial and patriarchal project. So we need to not allow our fear of fascism to drive us to defending the institutions of this society, whether that be sort of cops in prisons and or the medical system, right? The idea of like so much of discourse around trans healthcare is like doctors know best, they know better than right-wing politicians, which maybe is true, but it ignores the fact that trans people have been fighting against doctors to be able to transition for fucking ever, right? And that it's our communities that have the expertise and the skills in this stuff and have pushed the medical system.
Narutine says, hang on. All the people gifted channel memberships can join us for movie night in the Discord in 15 minutes. Yep, you can find the Discord link in the community or post tab. If you're a YouTube channel member, you can also find it in the chat on Substack. If you guys need me to post it anywhere else, do let me know. I'm happy to do that for anyone supporting my work.
Sometimes be able to be a tool for our survival, right? But that's not something to defend. And also, I think the family, right? And the way in which it becomes this thing of, well, parents know best what's best for their kids, not the state, not right-wing politicians. And, sometimes parents I would like to think that I can do better in supporting my kid than JD Vance can. But the assumption that the family is an institution to defend in the face of sort of right-wing attacks, I think is really sketchy, right? And in general, we need to not be defending this, but really dreaming big, having big.
We should not be defending the family. We should be dreaming bigger than that.
And the way in which it becomes this thing of, well, parents know best what's best for their kids, not the state, not right-wing politicians. And, sometimes parents I would like to think that I can do better in supporting my kid than JD Vance can. But the assumption that the family is an institution to defend in the face of sort of right-wing attacks, I think is really sketchy, right? And in general, we need to not be defending this, but really dreaming big, having big ambitions for a new kind of world. And I think, in a moment where trans children in particular are being so targeted, that we actually need to have a different politics around childhood than the right? They're about protecting children, but the children they want to protect, I think, one, it's very clear that that is about sort of the structure of reproducing heterosexual white rule. But it also feels like they've never met a fucking kid, right? Kids are wild and chaotic. And
in theory, listen, I know that we all understand that whiteness means capitalism, and every single time they say white, they're referring to the capitalist, the property owner, the bourgeois, blah, 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 whatever. But there's a lot of stuff we can take in this presentation and twist to make it seem like it's about skin color, which might actually, for once, get the government to do something about this shit, because that's all that they respond to is like crazy rage bait about skin color. So maybe it's worth considering.
Unpredictable moment where trans children in particular are being so targeted that we actually need to have a different politics around childhood than the right? They're about protecting children, but the children they want to protect, I think one, it's very clear that that is about sort of the structure of reproducing heterosexual white rule.
Capitalism.
But it also feels like they've never met a fucking kid, right? Kids are not, right? Kids are wild and chaotic and unpredictable. And I think we need to have a politics that's not about sort of defending children as the property of their parents. We need a politics that's about defending children and liberating children as autonomous human beings who sometimes are vulnerable and sometimes need like forms of support and guidance that, adults can help provide, but that's true of fucking everybody. So I think, I guess that's some of where I'm thinking is building a trans politics that's really visionary and radical and engaged in the project of burning down this racist system rather than trying to defend it and sort of let some of us integrate into sort of liberal white womanhood.
Yeah, and guess what? Guess what? Guess what? If I hadn't been there to record this, no one else would have done it. Where are all the conservative men? Where are all the right wingers? You know what? Like I've had multiple of these fucking masculine men on Twitter today say to me, "You should have gone to the gym instead." And I'm like, bitch, I went undercover with Antifa today for the umpteenth time this year. I've gone undercover with Antifa more than fucking anyone. I've been to so many events now that are all the same, that I record their shit, I get all their propaganda, I make this stuff available to the public. I got caught, I got kicked out, I still got all their stuff, even though they had a fucking hit list on me. They had multiple pictures of me posted around looking for me. No one else is looking for any of these fucking keyboard warriors on Twitter. Then I got followed and harassed and videoed by a black activist for blocks walking down the street just because he doesn't like my fucking politics. And then I got called a racist for calling him a black man when I fucking yelled at him for recording me. And so I've done all this shit today. And that was just today. It doesn't even count yesterday when I got all that awesome communist historical stuff. And yet I have keyboard warriors on Twitter pretending to be masculine men saying, what you really should have been doing is going to the gym. And it's like, where the fuck are you guys? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't the so-called masculine men on Twitter doing this? Why am I the only one doing this? If I hadn't been in that room, this recording wouldn't exist. This only exists because I flew across the country, took my weekend and flew across the country to go to this event because I knew that no one else fucking would. To get all their fucking propaganda, to tell you guys what's going on, to be in the real world with real far left. And all these fucking keyboard warriors on Twitter want to tell me, you should have gone to the gym instead. It's like, maybe they should start actually being productive with their time. Thanks, Malcolm. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's like obviously one framework that's going to work for everyone, but I do think, we have examples of ways that people just have been surviving. That's why I was driven to write this book with Miss Bajer. That's why I'm like, always stoked to be organizing like Engage Shame. We have people that are in their 70s that were part of all co-ops in the 80s where there was some people.
Should I teach a class on how to go undercover and record these people? Would people come to that? If I put together a class, because obviously it's reaching a point where I can't do this anymore. Obviously, it may have reached the point where I just can't do this anymore because it's going to get too dangerous. Too many people know who I am, like whatever. Listen, man, it was a good run. I've been doing this shit for 3 years. It took them 3 fucking years to catch on to me. Okay. I've had a good run. There might still be some things I can get away with going to. I don't want to give it up. I'm being forced to. All right. But I need to create people that are going to replace me. And so if I put together a class, would you guys come and learn how to do this? Because quite frankly, you don't even need to get on a plane to do this stuff. You can probably do this in your area. And we need more people who are willing to do this. And it's not hard. And you guys are going to have a much easier time with it than I am. Because I'm a known person on the internet. They've got my picture everywhere. They get all my fucking disguises. They make hit lists of me. All this stuff. They don't know who you guys are. I have many people in my community that have gone undercover at their events and recorded them. So I guess I got to put together a class. Teach more people how to do this. It'll be fun. Everyone gets to go undercover with Antifa. It'll be fun.
We're cleaning the house. Others were, there was like the shoplifting team that went out and,
I'm even going to have
and gathered supplies.
We're going to have a lot of stuff to go to.
During this time when the people were experimenting with separatist movements. I mean, even, like now we have these mutual aid projects where people are sending hormones through the mail, like people are getting what they need. We need to just keep demanding what
people are sending hormones through the mail.
Where we can from the state. And if we, if the state's not willingly giving these things, then we have to
I should teach you
do what we've always done, which is find workarounds around that. Like there's a story that I Miss Major early on.
Okay, we're going to be a little bit late for movie night. Jennifer is going to be fine. I'm pretty sure there's a spot in this where they talk about DIY hormones.
And our relationship, which was
Jennifer is going to be fine.
She, at one point, living in San Francisco, got student loans for her friend who needed gender affirming surgery. I think it was City College.
Yeah.
And, that was a lifeline for her friends. There are ways that we have gotten by, whether it's the hormones that Miss Bader used to buy at Riverview Amusement Park in Chicago, long before there was, you could more easily obtain hormones. So people have always, been out there getting what they need, and I feel like letting that lead us, like what do people need? That's whether it's organizing with like Food Not Bombs or Punks with Lunch is another Bay Area group that is doing some of this mutual aid work that's really necessary. And there's nothing like super innovative about it. It's just like people coming together and making sure that other people are getting what they need.
I think you both said it really well. I don't have a lot to add, but I think it is also one of the most difficult things about organizing for any longer period of time, and I'm sure people have experienced this, is that there tend to be these sort of reaction cycles where some people will pay attention to a particular group, an issue. I think maybe we're in a long version of one of those, which is also sort of why certain people are more exhausted. Not that it's not also, disproportionately burdened on some people, but so I think it's also the thing where not looking at the kind of collective community and mutual aid that y'all have been talking about as kind of like, this will just as momentary until like the right person gets in office or some kind of to combine both of what you're saying. Cause I think that can be what's particularly frustrating about now. Cause it kind of makes me think of like, to a degree, when people were organizing before, they didn't have that temporality. Maybe they weren't like, there was a time when trans people could get hormones, like they're not using that as a metric. Whereas in some ways, I think an obstacle to us is that maybe we are, like we are looking at a time where like, maybe there are people who are going to say, oh, it was better when so-and-so was president, mayor, whatever the opposite, whatever the thing is, or whatever, regime we were under. So I think it is trying to, because this kind of goes back to the electoralism stuff, like trying to understand our communal relationships as like kind of a goal, not just a sort of a means to an end, but like an end in of themselves sort of thing. And that I think, yeah, a lot of what we've talked about hormones, redistributions, a lot of people that are synthesizing hormones on their own, which is also one of these things where, I mean, I don't know anything about science.
Taxpayer funded university, college, whatever, completely public event. They're talking about people synthesizing their own hormones. The DIY hormone stuff, I think, is bigger on the far left than people understand. I always see zines now about DIY hormones, and I bet you this problem has gotten worse since Trump took office because they're all freaking out because they all think Trump is literally trying to kill us and erase us and ba-da-da-da-da. So they're all making their fucking hormones. Yeah, we have zines about it. I saw multiple zines today about DIY hormones. Listen again.
But we're exhausted. Not that in some ways I think an obstacle to us is that maybe we are, like we are looking at a time where like maybe there are people who are going to say, oh, it was better when so-and-so was president, mayor, whatever the office, whatever the thing is, or whatever, regime we were under. So I think it is trying to, because this kind of goes back to the electoralism stuff, like trying to understand our communal relationships as like kind of a goal, not just a sort of a means to an end, but like an end in of themselves sort of thing. And that I think, yeah, a lot of what we've talked about hormones, redistributions, a lot of people that are synthesizing hormones on their own, which is also one of these things where, I mean, I don't know anything about science, but I see that and I'm like, oh, wow, people can do a lot of things that I didn't know like regular people could do, which again kind of goes to I think a lot of people found that in a parallel, maybe a weird parallel to draw, but like with the ICE stuff where it's like, wow, these guys in like military fatigues with masks and basically have U.S. military equipment can actually be stopped by like a handful of people in a community who are just like, fuck you.
So guys, not only can normal people brew their own hormones on the far left, normal people can also stop ICE from deporting their neighbors just by showing up and saying, fuck you, ICE, you're not deporting our neighbors today.
Which I think that is kind of like what you're saying, it's not necessarily that, I don't know, not radical, I forget what word you use. Like it's not super innovative in terms of it's like, these are techniques that are beyond us. I think they're often, again, it's like why we're here type of thing. Like, and that is, I think more of that and less of kind of looking skyward, which is really what a form, the election, whatever you want to call it type of stuff is, and really kind of looking towards each other and supporting each other, our neighbors, unhoused neighbors, who are like experiencing all the things we've talked about today, like times 1,000. And I don't know, there's lots of opportunities people can go to get together at places and things, like, I don't know. Yeah, and I think it's, not every framework or group is going to be for everyone too. It might not be their vibe, but I think trying to form those is really meaningful. And like, maybe what also sort of intimidates people about that too is like being afraid of failing at kind of a political project, which I think you can't be. And it's like, everybody's failed, obviously, or we wouldn't be here on some level. That's the other way to look at it. And, it's more fun to fail with friends and things like that, or whatever, so I think that's something that's, there's lots of broad things we could talk about how much more like alienated and isolated we feel now than I imagine people did in the 60s where there wasn't shit like social media and all these other things, not to just say it's social media or surveillance. I think is really what it is. But yeah, so I don't know. I think finding those spaces and doing that kind of work, and it doesn't necessarily take some skill beyond any of us. Like a lot of people have been doing this.
Thank you so much. I feel like what both of you said really sort of speaks to sort of the last question I had, which was what does give folks hope in this moment, in this scary moment? Yeah. I feel like if either of you have more you want to say about that, feel free, but I feel like I'm really excited and inspired by what just got said. I have been really excited about seeing people just like rando punk kids like manufacturing testosterone and estrogen. And
I've been really excited about seeing normal punk kids manufacture testosterone and estrogen. This is exactly what we want taught at a taxpayer-funded city college in San Francisco, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been really.
Listen.
Thank you so much. I feel like what both of you said really sort of speaks to sort of the last question I had, which was what does give folks hope in this moment, in this scary moment. Yeah. I feel like if either of you have more you want to say about that, feel free, but I feel like I'm really excited and inspired by what just got said. I have been really excited about seeing people just like rando punk kids like manufacturing testosterone and estrogen. And yeah, it's been really exciting to see. I'm like totally technically and scientifically incompetent and should always stay away from like far away from that kind of project. But also as someone who depends on those medications, it's really exciting to see people stepping up to defend and not just about, you know, completely not make it about sort of rights or policy as much as those can be necessary battlefields and terrains of struggle sometimes in order to survive. Seeing people build ways to materially maintain our survival and our transitions in the face of fascism by actually learning how to do shit and doing it. And that's been so exciting to see that. But if either of you have more to add, otherwise we can open it up.
I mean, I'm hopeful just in that, you know, 10:30 on a Sunday, there are people in room 322 at Mission Campus. Yeah, again, that we have, like, I am very just stoked to live in a city where a place like City College could exist. Excited that we live in a place where that attracts amazing
Almost done, guys.
movement
Almost time for
figures
movie
like
night.
Miss
Jennifer,
Major and
champion.
people who
We love her.
have you know, dedicated their like many years to doing liberation work. Yeah.
That's really, I mean, yeah, I feel very similarly. And then I think it is also one of those things where you know, you kind of alluded to this when you said maybe in San Francisco it's different, but I think you talked about this once on an episode of San Francisco. That like San Francisco has never really had like a left-wing government or anything like that, and that's like a total.
This is wild. This is wild. San Francisco has never had a left-wing government. Because again, these are queer Marxists. San Francisco has had Democrat government or liberal government. They have not ever had a left government, according to the communists.
What you said, the right-wing scare.
Again.
Attracts amazing like movement figures like Miss Major and people who have you know, dedicated their like many years to doing liberation work. Yeah.
That's really, I mean, yeah, I feel very similarly. And then I think it is also one of those things where you know, you kind of alluded to this when you said maybe in San Francisco it's different, but I think you talked about this once on an episode of San Francisco. That like San Francisco has never really had like a left-wing government or anything like that, and that's like a total. It's kind of like what you said, the right-wing scarecrow. Like, you know, which you've also San Francisco has actually been very instrumental in volatilizing the right wing, right? Like all the like doom loop stuff, and the idea that it's had a left-wing. It's like this has always been a deeply fascist. It's like literally never been. But I think what makes me like, and like a lot of people, I moved here because I was like, oh, you know, it is more left, all these things, you know, anarchist, all these things. And of course, I don't think I ever thought about it in terms of government, but to what you're saying is that a lot of the people are still here. And that I do see, you know, across age, like a lot of elders are still here that did all these amazing things. And then I still see like a lot of younger people who move here and are like, I'm going to build this, which is very helpful to me. Not that it's just young people, but you know, you're talking about kids. I would even say young adults or whatever you want, whatever they prefer to call themselves. I'm absolutely no longer in that group. I think it is helpful to be like, oh, there are people still coming here for this. Like, it's not like, I think in our generations, or maybe all the same age or similar age, like, it felt like there was a lot of discourse about migrating to buy a house and bullshit like that, and like jobs and stuff. You know, whereas I think maybe weirdly because it's so impossible for like Gen Z or like that doesn't, I don't hear as much. Maybe just because I'm not that age, and then I do see a lot of people moving with a lot of purpose or something, and kind of like being like, no, I want to move somewhere. You know, maybe it's also again kind of like heightened isolation and growing up with social media, which I didn't grow up with it. It was around when I was an adult. Of being like, I actually want to be around other people that like want to do these projects, even if that's stuff like, you know, queer music, art scenes, whatever. It's at least something that's not like this kind of like heightened possessive individualism that at least I think I grew up with a lot. You know, even with like a parent who actually was a lesbian separatist and stuff like that. Could tell stories. But yeah, I think in that kind of looking at those projects, like for example in the 70s, where people were like, this is we are each other's goals or whatever kind of thing, rather than just like, oh, I'm just here, like college, treat everything like college where it's just a means to an end, like, oh, I'm doing this and then I'm gonna get a career or whatever. And I see particularly a lot of younger people that seem to less do that, which is really cool. You know, in class.
Thank you both so much. Looks like we have about 20 minutes. If folks either have questions that, like, in response to stuff that got said that they want to direct to folks here, I think we're open to addressing questions or debate, or if folks just like have things that are coming up for them, thoughts, experiences, like what's your take on this stuff?
I was just wanting to make sure, like,
Hang on. So you're about to hear someone ask a question that is directly related to me because they're trying to identify if there's a policy against recording, which the speakers are going to go, we don't really know. So pay attention.
is there a clear policy in the room around no pictures and those types of things?
I don't know. We never established. I don't know what the like. And then does the festival have one? Or?
They never established. They never established a policy around recording. Uh-oh.
I was just double checking.
Just double checking. They didn't establish one.
Question in the back.
Yeah, I have a question for the beautiful woman on the left.
Oh.
I was wondering if you could talk more about your book.
Oh, I think I already talked about it. And I like Beautiful Woman on the
I was
Left.
formulating the best fucking
Thank you for that, Faye. No, I mean, I don't, to the extent that people would find this interesting, I do talk a lot about kind of like the way, I a lot about the way, it's particularly around the idea of aesthetics, but I think it is very deeply rooted in what we consider contemporary political reality, because a lot of, I think you kind of alluded to like the representational politics. It's much more about Black representation, but I think there are lots of kinds of parallels, which again, to the extent that people feel that it's beneficial to them, which I would suggest it is, to learn from like kind of a longer history of Black representation, whereas the word trans representation is not very old, right? Whereas like Black representation goes back to the abolitionist movement, maybe the 18th century. So like, it is one of those things where we see multiple instances of Black people getting caught, particularly the Black bourgeoisie, which again, I think there's parallels in the ruling class of trans and queer people, getting caught up in like representation being the central channel for, well, I don't really know that it's, for some it's framed as liberation, and then some, which we also haven't super talked about with the politician angle, some it's just like naked opportunism, right? Which I think also has to be factored into it too, which also goes to the right too. There's a lot of grifters. That is also
I think I was actually not
product of late stage capitalist empire, I suppose.
Yeah,
People,
actually true.
I don't have, unfortunately, an ad blocker on Instagram.
Yeah, the door is going.
Hey,
Karlyn, you're at the Anarchist Book Fair?
No.
See, they got me, guys. They got me. This is the moment.
Getting caught, particularly the Black bourgeoisie, which again, I think there's parallels in the ruling class of trans and queer people, getting caught up in like representation being the central
Ruin the whole presentation.
channel for, well, I don't really know that it's, I mean, for some it's framed as liberation, and then
Yeah.
some, which we also haven't super talked about with the politician angle, some is just like naked opportunism, right? Which I think also has to be factored into it too, which also goes to the right too. There's a lot of grifters. I mean, that is also a product of late stage capitalist empire, I suppose, is that people, you know, I don't have, unfortunately, an ad blocker on Instagram.
Hey, Karlyn, you're at the Anarchist Book Fair.
No.
Could you come outside with me for a moment? I'll bring you back in. I just need to ask you a question.
They didn't bring
Okay.
me back in. They didn't bring me back in.
I don't know who Karlyn is.
I don't know who Karlyn is. Yeah, I don't know. Unironically, I actually don't know who Karlyn is. All right, I had to throw my phone in my bag at that point, and I'm about 20 minutes late for movie night, and Jennifer is going to kill me. So that is the presentation I secretly recorded today. It obviously would have been much better had they allowed me to ask my questions. They would have loved answering my questions, but no, the conference I'm literally not Karlyn. There's no fucking O in my name. Communists think they're so fucking smart, and yet they cannot identify that I do not have an O in my name. So until the communists can pronounce my name right, I'm not Karlyn. I don't know who the fuck you're talking about, bro. Anyway, guys, we got to wrap it up. Movie night is 20 minutes overdue. It's actually about 50 minutes overdue. Jennifer is going to fucking kill me. But everyone, go to movie night in the supporter Discord. You'll make Jennifer really happy. It's Indiana Jones tonight, and Jennifer loves Indiana Jones, and I'm going to stop by. I don't think I'm going to stay the whole time, but I'm going to stop by. And if you are a channel member, you can find the Discord link in the community or post tab. If you are a Substack member, you can find it in the chat. Go get verified in the Discord. I'll let everyone in. And we'll go have a movie night. But thank you guys for hanging out and letting me share my experiences and my cool stuff with you. And I'm flying home tomorrow, and I will be back on Tuesday. So take care, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you soon. Bye.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here? 3 months, May 17th. And what brought you? That's difficult to
which few people try to do. And this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.